Sabrina barely had time to react before she saw a steel disc hurtling toward her stomach. As she prepared to unleash a burst of flame, an invisible force seized her body, locking her in place like a puppet caught in a merciless grip. Telekinetic restraint, she realized, eyes narrowing. Luke's signature move. Fortunately, she had come prepared. The enchanted ring on her finger was designed to counter psychic interference. But she hadn't anticipated facing a barrage of 10-kilogram steel projectiles. The disc struck her midsection with brutal force. Pain bloomed instantly, and she doubled over, choking back the bile rising in her throat. Before she could recover, Luke recalled the disc and slammed it into her again. This time, she vomited. She had always relied on her dual auras for combat, never her physical strength. Her body, while above average, was no match for raw kinetic impact. Feeling all right? Luke asked with a faint smirk. Kneeling on the ground, pale and trembling, Sabrina glared at him with venom in her eyes. "Don't look at me like that," Luke said calmly. "I could have used all 10 discs. I only used one." "You bastard," she hissed. "Just wait." Her threat was cut short as another disc smashed into the floor near her hand, fracturing the tiles. "Let's get serious. Miss Spellman, or is even that name a lie?" Luke's tone sharpened. Interrogation came before execution. Nevermore might object to murder on campus, but Luke knew the law of the outcast world. If someone tried to kill you, you had every right to kill them first. Sabrina groaned and nodded. "My first name is real. The last name was fake." "Who else is with you?" he demanded. "No one," she croaked, disbelief swirling in her eyes. How had this orphan boy, this normie-raised nobody, overpowered her so thoroughly? "You were underestimated," Edgar said, floating beside Luke. "They thought a junior would be enough." Luke tilted his head. "Why attack me now? The hag's ambush was far more coordinated. You could have used your red aura to control me." "Don't give me that crap," Sabrina spat. "You always avoided me. I couldn't get close enough to manipulate you emotionally." Edgar laughed. "Looks like that antisocial personality of yours came in handy." Luke scowled but remained silent. His instinctive distrust of Sabrina had nothing to do with suspicion, only that she didn't appear in the show. With Enid and Xavier, he had context. With Sabrina, he had nothing. "You never left your dorm. I had to use the favor you owed me to get you to the festival. When that plan flopped, I stopped waiting. I'm done with this wretched academy." "She really hates Nevermore," Luke noted. She'd already insulted it more than once. "You hate Nevermore?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Of course. Because of you, I was forced to come here and listen to all this pro-normie garbage." Luke frowned. "Because of me? You were at another school?" "Academy of the Dark Arts," she replied. "Much more efficient. No need to coexist with inferiors." "So, she came from a radicalist school. That explained the extreme ideology." "You'd have done well there," Sabrina continued. "I saw that video of you. They punished you for something stupid. At my school, they'd have praised it. We host duels stronger than that." She suddenly shifted tones, trying to be seductive. "Our families have bad blood, but you can let me go. I'll talk to my father. This war doesn't concern you." "Shut up and answer the damn questions," Luke said, slamming another disc into her stomach. "Cough, cough." Sabrina wheezed, clutching her gut, tears spilling down her cheeks. If she had her way, Luke would already be ashes. "Ask about her grandfather," Edgar said. "And if she has siblings. Is her grandfather still alive?" Sabrina hesitated. Discs floated ominously closer. "No, he died because of your father." "My father?" Luke thought, confused. "Your old man dealt him a fatal blow," Edgar explained. "I wasn't sure he died, but this confirms it." "Any siblings?" Luke asked. "A brother, a year older, and—" Luke's tone dropped to a sinister whisper. "And what? Want another punch? I could rip your mind apart and find out the rest." That was a bluff. He couldn't read past memories, only current thoughts, and only with intense focus. His real strength was command. With direct eye contact, he could force obedience for a few seconds, enough to turn the tide in battle. Sabrina's resolve crumbled. A half-sister. Same age. My father's blood, different mother. "Enough," Edgar said. "That's it." Luke asked mentally. I want more. About her father. About the demons. She won't know. Too young. Too low in rank. But I'll tell you soon. For now, congratulations. You've defeated the first spellman. Luke clenched his jaw. He wanted to end this now, before anyone interrupted. The others were still distracted at the courtyard picnic. He raised his hand, eyes locking on her pale neck. Sabrina scrambled back, panic rising. Wait, you kill me, and my father will slaughter you. She's not wrong, Edgar warned. You'll only attract worse threats. Erase her memory. Insert a false one. Safer. But I can kill her. I'm wounded. The place is wrecked. It'll be self-defense. Yes, but killing her triggers escalation. Let her stay a junior assassin. You'll need real experience when the heavyweights come. Use your head. Luke breathed out slowly. What if I dislocate her arm, heal it later, and wipe the memory? Will she remember the pain? Torture memories are harder to erase, but doable. Let Veronica heal her afterward. Just don't overdo it. A shadow of a grin crossed Luke's face. With a flick of his hand, Sabrina's arm twisted violently out of its socket. Her scream was strangled by his telekinesis as he sealed her mouth shut. Her eyes widened with terror. Hurts, Luke whispered coldly, leaning close. Sabrina only whimpered. One by one, Luke bent her fingers back, slow and methodical. Each joint snapped with a sickening crunch. Her muffled cries echoed in the empty gym. That's enough, Edgar said at last. Luke dropped her. She collapsed like a broken doll. Gasping, tears streaming, pride shattered. Without pity, Luke lifted her again. She floated, limp and trembling, eyes brimming with hate and fear. So pathetic, he muttered. Then, without warning, he punched her in the temple. Control, but hard. She crumpled instantly. Luke sat down beside her unconscious body, exhaling deeply. The anger faded. Time to erase her memory. This was his first attempt. The theory was sound. Edgar would guide him. It would work. He reached out, eyes glowing faintly, and began rewriting the truth. Come to the gym. Quick. Luke's telepathic message echoed in Veronica's mind. Sabrina lay unconscious on the floor. The damage was done, but not all of it had to remain. Luke had already erased her memories of the battle, the attempted assassination, the interrogation, the pain. In their place, he inserted a fabricated memory, a friendly duel gone wrong. In this version, Sabrina had asked for a sparring match, curious about Luke's strength. A miscalculated move during the duel caused her to get struck in the head by one of Luke's flying discs. The chaos in the gym? Just collateral damage. The shattered ring? A casualty of stray telekinetic force. The illusion was imperfect, but plausible, especially with Veronica's help. The gym doors opened, and Veronica Umbrio stepped inside. With her dark hair sleek as obsidian and amber eyes sharp with intelligence, she was elegance in motion. As the only student who knew Luke possessed both red and blue auras, she'd been the natural choice to assist with the cleanup. Her eyes widened as she scanned the gym. Scorched tiles, scorched walls, scattered weights. And Sabrina collapsed in the middle of it all. What happened here? She demanded. What did you do to her? She tried to kill me, Luke replied bluntly, pointing to the cut on his cheek. Spellman family. Ring any bells? Veronica knelt beside him, concerned eyes flicking to Sabrina's dislocated arm and mangled fingers. Luke quickly explained the fabricated version she was to confirm. In this story, there was no murder attempt, just a reckless duel. Veronica would be the key witness. Be nice, he said flatly, or the video comes out. Veronica rolled her eyes. I get it. With a calm breath, she began healing Sabrina. Her skills far outclassed those of most green aura users. Clean, efficient, refined. When she finished, she turned to Luke and took a step closer. What are you doing? Luke asked, stepping back slightly. Your face. The cut. You're not supposed to be injured in this friendly duel, remember? Luke nodded, having forgotten. Veronica raised her hands, a gentle green light forming between her palms as she held them near his cheek. You're slow, Luke muttered after a minute. Don't talk, Veronica replied, focusing. It's deeper than it looks. In the past, she would never have snapped at him. But after months of tense cooperation, she had come to understand Luke better. He wasn't the arrogant tyrant she had first imagined, just a boy forced into a role he didn't want, using threats only because he had been threatened first. There. Done, she said eventually. Luke touched his face and found the skin smooth, the cut gone. Thanks. Veronica blinked, stunned. You thank me? What's with that face? Luke asked with a frown. You've never said that before. I've given you books, tutoring. Luke sighed inwardly. Why does everyone think I'm ungrateful? He was thankful to Natasha, Larissa, Enid, Xavier, and now Veronica. He just didn't always say it. 10 minutes later, Sabrina stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and she groaned, disoriented. The implanted memory held. According to it, she had lost the duel because of a momentary distraction. It made sense. Luke was at level 2, something she expected. He wasn't unbeatable. Still, she found it hard to believe. If she had really wanted to kill him, she could have. But somehow he'd gotten the better of her. Next time, she promised herself, there won't be a distraction. Next time, I'll end him. She gave a gracious farewell, even volunteering to inform Principal Weems about the friendly duel and the unfortunate gym damage caused by her fire. Luke watched her leave with a cold detachment. It all worked out, he thought, exiting the gym. He had bigger matters to attend to, like finally learning the truth about the Spellmans and the demons from Edgar. Are you okay? Veronica asked, quickening her pace to catch up. I'm fine. You already healed the only wound I had, Luke replied. That's not what I meant, she said, tone softer now. I mean, she just tried to kill you. And she's from the family that, well, that hurt your parents. Luke's expression tightened. I don't need your concern. You dragged me into this, Veronica said, sounding more frustrated than hurt. I used the video, not your kindness. You're not part of this war, and I don't expect you to be. Today was enough. Luke paused. In fact, I'll delete the video. You're free. No more favors. No more threats. You don't owe me anything. It was meant to be a gesture of goodwill. But instead of relief, Veronica looked stricken. So now that I'm no longer useful, you're tossing me aside? Luke blinked. What? I guess I was the only idiot who thought our relationship had improved, she said, her voice cracking. I actually liked helping you. I thought we were getting closer. She turned away. Forget it. I won't bother you again. Luke stood stunned. Veronica, always popular, always admired, was walking away from him, her posture rigid with pain. She had liked him. Not just respected. Liked. He watched her silhouette grow smaller. I just freed her. Why is she angry? You still don't understand the heart of a young lady, Edgar said, appearing beside him. Luke sighed. What do you mean? She liked you. She wasn't helping because of the video. She did it because she wanted to. That girl's eyes lit up every time she tutored you. Luke remembered the way she smiled while explaining the intricacies of aura control, the way she lingered after each lesson. Maybe Edgar was right. You've got some charm, boy, Edgar said with a chuckle. Caught her attention without even trying. We're cousins, Luke muttered, grimacing. So, my wife was my cousin. Psychic bloodlines don't have the same issues as normie genetics. In fact, we prefer it. Keeps the aura strong. Luke groaned and rubbed his temple. He had no desire to debate genetics or moral philosophy, and certainly no interest in romantic tension with Veronica. He resumed walking, the weight of the day catching up to him. Behind him, Edgar floated quietly, stroking his mustache. Demons. Spellmans. Emotions. Just another day.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Luke arrived at his bedroom. Xavier was not there. He was most likely still eating with Ajax's family. This was better for Luke, as he had to have a conversation with Edgar. Tell me about the demons, Luke said, sitting on his bed. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time, but Edgar didn't want to answer. Where to start, said Edgar, scratching his head. So far it is known of the existence of two planes, the earthly and the underworld. The earthly is where we live. The underworld plane is separate from the earthly one. What we know of this place is almost non-existent. We only know that in that plane there are powerful and malevolent supernatural beings. They only want to cause destruction and are pure evil. We call them demons, Edgar explained after a few minutes. Is the Bible real? Are there angels and an all-powerful God out there too? Asked Luke with a raised eyebrow. No. So far there are no records of benevolent beings towards humans. At least according to the knowledge I have, and it is quite a lot. This information is known to only a few people in the world, Edgar replied, shaking his head. The names they were given may be influenced by the Bible, but it has nothing to do with it. You just have to keep in mind that they are powerful and evil beings living in a different dimension than ours, added Edgar. How evil? Asked Luke. They just want to murder humans. The more, the better. They don't discriminate between normies and outcasts. For that reason, even the most outlandish and ghoulish families of outcasts would never associate with demons, replied Edgar. I see. If they are from a different dimension, how can they get to kill humans? Asked Luke. Through satanic dealings. A contract between a human and a demon. Even normies can make these deals if they know how to make them. Why would a person make a deal with a being that irrationally hates humans and only wants to murder them? By power. In the case of outcasts, when completing the deal, they get a strengthening of their aura in the case of psychics or immortality. It depends on how powerful the demon is, Edgar replied. Whoa, you know a lot, said Luke, processing all the information. Of course, I hunted demons, or rather the bastards who made deals with demons, said Edgar, puffing out his chest proudly. Demon hunter, thought Luke with a strange expression on his face. All to increase power or gain immortality like the hag. I guess the odds of going insane aren't there, but there must be some downside, right? Said Luke. Not everything was rosy in the world. For such an increase in power, you should pay a high price. It was common sense. Exactly. The outcast will have a great increase in power. Even a psychic could get a new aura, but this is not free. All the contracts the demons make ask for only one thing, said Edgar, making a dramatic silence. What? Asked Luke impatiently. Souls. People who make deals with demons must provide them with the souls they crave. Until the end of time. The contract has no time limit and is not egalitarian. As you think, to get souls you must murder people, and the demons are not content with just one soul. They want hundreds of thousands. The hunger of these beings knows no bounds, Edgar said in a serious tone. That's why they are the enemies of all outcasts, nodded Luke. The demons only wanted to cause chaos and destruction. The more humans they killed, the better. Yes, even extremists who hate normies dare not make deals with demons. Few are the bold ones who dare to make them, and if caught they will be hunted down by the elite outcast families, said Edgar. So why are the Spellmans still alive and kicking? Asked Luke. If Edgar was a demon hunter when he was alive, he just had to tell the world that the Spellmans made deals with demons and would become the enemy of the world. Old outcast families like the Spellmans have a great reputation. Usually, those who make deals with demons are not those kinds of old, established families. However, the Spellmans did it, and the Poe family found out about it. But we couldn't produce the evidence in time to validate that they made deals with demons. Those bastards are very good at hiding everything, Edgar replied. How did the Poe family realize the Spellmans made deals with demons? Asked Luke, curious. My wife Virginia died in 1847, said Poe with a sad expression. A year later my relationship with Elmira Spellman improved. We knew each other from before we were co-workers. He added with a nostalgic look. Flashback. Maryland, Baltimore, USA. On a narrow cobblestone street stood an old red brick house. The front of the house showed signs of the passage of time, with wooden windows framed by worn moldings and a carved wooden front door with ornate, though now somewhat faded, detailing. Inside the house was a modest space. Cleanliness was non-existent. At a simple wooden table sat two people staring at each other, a man and a woman. Would you like some tea or something? The man asked in a tired tone. His hair was tousle black. He had a mustache and his eyes were devoid of life. His name was Edgar Allan Poe, a powerful psychic who was very famous in the outcast community. In the normie community, he had made a name for himself with his tales of terror, but as yet he had not achieved worldwide fame. The woman with pale blonde hair and gray eyes watched the man in front of her. She couldn't recognize the powerful psychic with the depressing man in front of her. "It's been almost a year since you disappeared. When do you plan to return?" the woman asked. Her name was Elmira Spellman. "I'm not going back to Boston. My brother already tried to convince me." "I won't," Edgar said. His mood would depress a normal person just looking at him. "I got information that there's a crazy cannibal outcast in Texas. He defeated and almost killed 2 members of the order. His increase in power may be due to demons," said Elmira. "I was asked to help. Will you come with me?" she added, looking hopefully at Edgar. She couldn't bear to see him like this. "No, I'm tired of fighting those bastards. It's most likely some idiot who did dark magic. You need to get over Virginia's death. Your family depends on you," said Elmira with concern. "My brother is more than capable of running the Poe family. He has heirs to spare with all the wives he has. If you'll excuse me, I have things to do," Edgar said with a frown. At the sound of Virginia's name, he felt a stabbing pain in his chest. Elmira had no choice but to say goodbye to Edgar. She had a mission, but once it was over she would return. She would not let Edgar rot in a depressive pit. She had known him for over 20 years and loved him too much to see him like this. 10 days later, Elmira returned. Any free time she had was spent at Edgar's house, keeping him company. She cleaned the house, cooked so Edgar would stop eating junk food, and talked as much as possible. In this way, a year passed. "Is she still not coming?" thought Edgar, looking at the door of his house. It had already been a week since Elmira went on a mission given for the order, most likely to look for clues from demons that usually led to nothing. They were crazy outcasts performing dark magic and killing normies by their own choice. Edgar's appearance was different from a year ago. His hair was combed and tidy. His eyes had regained sparkle, and he no longer had a depressive aura about him. All this thanks to one woman, Elmira. His ears picked up footsteps approaching his door. He quickly got up and opened the door. A smile formed on his face as he saw that it was Elmira who was about to knock. "Edgar, don't scare me like that," said Elmira, putting a hand on her chest. "I'm sorry." Come in," said Edgar with a slight smile, taking the woman by the hand. "What a gentleman. A year ago you barely opened the door for me, and you were always looking at me with an annoyed face," Elmira said with a smile. "I'm sorry for showing you that part of me," said Edgar, embarrassed. "I'm just kidding. It's nothing," said Elmira with a chuckle and sat back in the chair. "What happened to your shoulder?" asked Edgar, concerned. He could see that Elmira's shoulder was completely bandaged. "A little mishap. In our work, we always put ourselves in danger." "It's normal," said Elmira without further explanation. Edgar nodded and asked, "A tea?" "Yes, please," Elmira replied. She was happy that Edgar had slowly been able to leave his depressed state. "How is your story going?" asked Elmira after Edgar had poured her tea. "Better than ever. I'll have it finished in no time. It will be a great success." "I can feel it," said Edgar confidently. "I'm glad to hear that," said Elmira with a smile. "How long will you be staying?" "There are many new activities we can do in Baltimore Dash," said Edgar enthusiastically. "Only 3 days," replied Elmira reluctantly. "So little?" "Well, work is work," thought Edgar. He gave up everything and lived on the Poe family's money. His stories and tales were not very profitable these days. "Would you like me to join you?" asked Edgar. He wouldn't mind resuming his demon-hunting activities if he could be with Elmira. "No need. You have to write your story." "You can't get distracted," said Elmira, refusing with a smile. Over the next 3 days, Elmira and Edgar did many activities together and spent their time happily until Elmira left for her mission. 15 days passed, and there was no sign of Elmira. Edgar was getting more and more impatient. Usually, missions take at most 10 days, and if it takes that long, Elmira sends him a letter. But so far, he has not received any letter. When he was about to go out to look for her, he received a letter from her. He thought she would tell him that she was delayed for something and it would arrive in a few days, but it wasn't so. In the letter, there was only an address. He recognized Elmira's handwriting. He knew this was not good. "Richmond, Kentucky," Edgar muttered, pocketing the letter. He walked out of his house and looked at the sky. It was cloudy. His body lifted off the ground and began to rise higher and higher. When he was a considerable distance from the ground, he began to fly at a great speed heading for Kentucky. The flying skill was among the most difficult for yellow aura psychics to master. He had about 900 kilometers to travel until he reached his destination and met Elmira. Edgar's speed in the sky was very ragged. It exceeded 200 kilometers per hour. After about 4 hours, he reached his destination. He did not stop for a moment. He looked at the town from the sky and landed in a lonely area. He didn't want a normie to have a scare to death. Richmond is a city located in Madison County. It was just beginning to develop for quite some time. Its population was as high as 10,000. Edgar walked along watching the normies coming and going. He walked until he came to a deserted street and stopped in front of what appeared to be an abandoned blacksmith shop. "It's here," thought Edgar, probing the place. He was able to find Elmira's aura inside this abandoned workshop. This is thanks to his clairvoyance ability. In the letter, it only said the name of the town and the county of Kentucky, so he had to look for her himself. He knew when he received a letter from Elmira with only one location that something in her mission had gone wrong, and she needed reinforcements. He worked with her for many years, and it wasn't the first time they had used this method to make their location known. Edgar entered the place through a dilapidated sheet metal door. Everything was dark, dusty, and cobwebby. When he took a few steps, he felt a knife at his neck. "Don't move," said a voice he recognized. "It's me, Elmira," said Edgar nonchalantly. He had already noticed the movement with his extrasensory ability. "Phew, you finally got here," said Elmira, dropping the knife and sitting on the floor, leaning her back against a box. Edgar turned around, and his eyes widened as he saw Elmira's condition. She had wounds and burns all over. The worst was a deep wound in her stomach that was bleeding heavily. "What happened to you?" asked Edgar with concern and growing anger. He would find the bastard who did this to Elmira and beat him to a pulp. "My brothers, Edward and Elton," Elmira replied with a wince. Edgar's worried and angry expression turned to confusion. "What did you say? I guess I didn't hear right," he said, cleaning his ears. "You heard right. My brothers left me in this condition," rectified Elmira. "Impossible. Why would they hurt you?" asked Edgar in disbelief. He knew that both brothers got along very well with Elmira. They were even overprotective of her. "Listen to me, Edgar. We don't have time. My brothers made deals with demons. At this time, I collected evidence, but they caught me. They wanted me to join them, but I refused them. That's why I am in this state, and they are hunting me," said Elmira in a serious tone. "Edward and Elton made deals with demons?" thought Edgar with a shocked expression. He knew both brothers very well. He fought side by side, hunting the bold ones who wanted to make deals with demons. They were not that kind of people. "I know it's hard to believe. Here, this scroll. You must protect the scroll and head to the address there. I managed to save the evidence." "You must retrieve it," said Elmira, passing an old scroll to Edgar, who was still processing all the information. Before he could say anything else, the entrance to the smithy exploded. The fire began to spread through the place. Edgar protected Elmira. With his telekinesis, he easily stopped all the debris heading towards them. "Oh, Edgar, you're here. That makes things difficult," said a middle-aged man walking through the fire. The man was blond and had a neat bar across his face and an icy stare. He had the same gray eyes as Elmira. "Looks like you got over your depression." "Congratulations," said a jet-haired man walking beside the blond man. Unlike the blond man, this man had a more relaxed and not-so-serious appearance. "Edgar, Elton," said Edgar, looking at both men he considered his friends and co-workers. "Give me an explanation or I will crush you," said Edgar with an angry look on his face. The air around him began to tighten, and an enormous pressure permeated the whole place in flames. The walls of the smithy shook, and it seemed that at any moment they would collapse. Both Elton and Edward felt an enormous pressure on them. Breathing was more difficult, and staying upright was difficult. "Your telekinesis is powerful as always," said Elton with a smile. A large amount of fire enveloped him and protected him from Edgar's immense pressure. "No explanation is needed. Looks like Elmira already told you," said Edward. A translucent barrier protected him from the enormous pressure. "You bastard. You made a deal with the demons." Why? Shouted Edgar, and a shockwave completely destroyed the smithy. Hey, take it easy, dude. You're attracting the attention of the normies, said Elton, escaping from being buried by the rubble. Sorry, are you okay? Said Edgar, who grabbed Elmira and saved her from being buried. Her injuries barely allowed her to move. Yes, replied Elmira. Why? It's simple. The normies. That's the answer, answered Edward, who was still impeccable. His clothes were not soiled by even a speck of dirt or dust. Their wars continue to spread, and their arrogance knows no bounds. As superior beings, we must stop them, added Edward with a serene and determined look. Being superior? Put aside your stupid god complex, Edgar said with a grimace. If you want to exterminate them, do it with your powers, but you've made deals with demons. I can't let that go. The demons will sooner or later force you to hunt outcasts, and you will endanger our society, added Edgar, as his aura increased. Edgar already verified that Elmira's words were real, not only by Edward's words. He could see with his clairvoyance the aura of Edward and Elton. He noticed that they were not the same as before and had demonic energies. Your confidence is admirable. Do you think I'm the same as before? I won't lose to you again, Edward said with a cold stare. The air around him began to drop, and beneath his feet, the ground froze. Let's see how much your powers increased with those stupid demons, said Edgar, preparing to fight. He knew his death was coming, but he would take at least one of them with him. You can't. You must flee. I will distract them. It's up to you to stop them in the future, exclaimed Elmira. No, I will stop them. You will come back alive. Here, said Edgar, passing the parchment back to her. Besides that, he pulled a small book out of one of his pockets. What is this? Asked Elmira. A teleporter, courtesy of my brother. It will send you to Boston. Near the Poe mansion, replied Edgar. When he was sinking into his depression, his brother visited him and gave him this teleporter for when he decides to return home. Elton, who heard this, was about to jump in, but Edward stopped him and shook his head. Edgar's clairvoyance was very advanced. He could predict their movements, dodge them, and the attack would be useless. His sister already had the teleporter in her hands. Her life was guaranteed. Edgar's, however, was not. I'm not leaving you here, said Elmira. Listen, Elmira. Thanks to you, I regained hope. It took me a long time, and you had to put up with me for so long in that deplorable state. And this time I realized that I love you. That's why I won't let you fight to the death with your family. Goodbye, Elmira, said Edgar, snapping his fingers. No, Edgar dash. Before Elmira could extend her hand towards Edgar, a blue light came out of the book she was holding and disappeared. Unfortunately, the teleporters only could carry a single person. Otherwise, Edgar would have fled. As a clairvoyant, he knew firsthand the current strength of both brothers. In the past, he would not be afraid, but now he knew that his life would most likely end here. In ancient times, the normies sought the protection of the more powerful outcasts so they would not die at the hands of the wild beasts. Thanks to that they survived, began Edward in a solemn tone. Here we go with the villain monologue, thought Edgar, wiping his ear. However, as soon as they were able to survive on their own, they bit the hand of the one who fed them, which hunting, discrimination, and annihilation towards our kind. Goody Adams is a good example of that. Do we have to hide while we watch them produce ever more dangerous weapons? Asked Edward, clenching his fist. I understand your point. What I don't get is why you brought the demons into this. They don't care about outcasts or normies. They just want souls. Even our souls are tastier to them, Edgar said. My power is not enough to exterminate them. Their numbers already number over 5 million in the United States alone, said Edward helplessly. Once I complete my mission, I will commit suicide. That way, the demon won't be able to control me anymore, he added with determination. Once he made a contract with a demon, it was for life. You could not cancel it. If you did not obey the demon, you could be tortured for life by him and become crazier than a hag. In the process, you will kill a lot of outcasts. I will not allow that, Edgar said with a frown. Around him, a large amount of metal began to float. Both were seeking the protection of the outcast society. One was willing to make sacrifices if that was what was necessary to exterminate the normies. The other would not allow the slaughter of innocent outcasts. Edward's arms froze, and more the coldness permeated around him. By contrast, Elton's arms had turned to fire. The fight between America's most powerful outcasts was about to begin, and its consequences would be— "That's it? How was the fight?" asked Luke, who was really hooked on the story of Edgar's epic death. "Our fight lasted a couple of hours. If I have to recount it, it will take too long. I died in the town of Richmond that day, but I managed to assassinate Elton," said Edgar, lazily recounting the whole fight. "He managed to kill one," thought Luke, looking respectfully at his great-great-grandfather. He faced two psychics who had their powers augmented by demons. Still, he was able to take one to his grave. "Wait, Richmond? That name rings a bell," Luke thought, starting to rummage through his memory. Thanks to his photographic memory, it didn't take him 10 seconds to find the answer. "Your fight destroyed Richmond, Kentucky?" asked Luke in surprise. In normie school, he had studied in his history class about this disaster, which for normies had been caused by nature. Overnight, the town of 10,000 people was completely destroyed. More than 85% of the inhabitants died, and not a single building was left standing. Public opinion accepted that it was an earthquake or something like that. Yes, unfortunately, many innocent normies died. Edward and Elton's fire and ice power was mighty. "I couldn't contain myself and used my telekinesis to the fullest," Edgar replied regretfully. "Jericho has the same inhabitants," thought Luke, surprised by the degree of destruction. Luke thought the level of power in Wednesday's world was no big deal. In the series, the fight to the death between Wednesday and Crackstone was no big deal. The school wasn't even destroyed. If a person with Edgar's power were to go into a city and no one had the power to stop him, he could create a huge massacre. Normies' weapons are not efficient against the power of a telekinetic like Edgar in the past. In your story, there seemed to be an organization that was in charge of eliminating demons or looking for information about people who may be in contact with them. "So it sounds like it's a big crime if you make deals with them," Luke said, and Edgar nodded. "If that's the case, all we have to do is get proof that the Spellmans are in contact with demons. That way the whole outcast society will turn against the Spellmans," Luke added. "If they pull this off, Luke won't be at a disadvantage and won't have to go up against a family hundreds of years old with wealth, numbers, and power alone." Easier said than done. When Elmira arrived at Poe Manor, she explained the situation to my brother. They tried to retrieve the evidence Elmira hid, but were intercepted by the Spellmans. "From that failure Poe's downfall began," Edgar said, gnashing his teeth. "The Spellman family has a lot of power within the outcast society. Their hands reach everywhere. For everyone to turn against them, we need truthful evidence. The Spellmans took it upon themselves to destroy the evidence that Elmira had collected," he added, shaking his head. "So you want me to take them out by myself?" asked Luke with a grimace. The Poe family in their splendor could not accomplish that task. It would be unrealistic for Luke alone to eradicate the Spellmans. While he was very confident in his skills and talent, he was not an arrogant idiot. He could take on a Hyde or Crackstone, but this was already another level. "Of course not. That task is nearly impossible. Do you think I asked your father and other ancestors to send themselves headlong against an invincible boss? The approach must be different. We must collect evidence. That way, the other ancient outcast families, whether they be psychics, werewolves, or vampires, will decide to attack the Spellmans," Edgar replied. "Of course, in addition to that, you must kill Edward and as many members of the Spellmans as possible," he added with a ghoulish grin. "I understand. If Edward made a deal with a demon so many years ago, he must have collected many souls of normies and even outcasts. Don't the others realize that?" asked Luke. "Since Edgar's fight against the two Spellman brothers, more than 100 years have passed. How many souls must Edward have collected? He must have many massacres on his hands by now." "True, but there's a problem. Edward doesn't act directly. He usually manipulates outcasts to do his soul-collecting work. That way it's very difficult for him to get caught. For example, he can control an insane, which to slaughter many normies and collect the souls he needs," Edgar explained. "Your parents, besides saving you, did not die in vain. The evidence they collected is not as good as Elmira's," but it will save you a lot of time. Natasha must be taking care of finding that evidence. You just have to keep training, he added, and Luke nodded reluctantly. He wanted to have real fights to the death, though of course not against Edward Spellman, or it would be the end of his short life. Didn't anyone in the outcast society do anything while two ancient families of psychics were at war? Asked Luke doubtfully. Although he knew it was a grudge that was believed to be personal, and they didn't know there were demons, it would be strange if no one would pry. Especially when Edgar was considered the most powerful psychic of his time, and the Poe family was in its golden age. No, you must understand that the outcast society has different customs and laws. No matter how much two ancient families conflict, no one will interfere. It doesn't matter if it's over a stupid grudge or a minor conflict. They will only meddle if there are demons involved or if they involve innocent third parties in their fight, Edgar replied. I understand. By the way, why didn't Natasha ever give me the necklace where you were resting? That way, I could have started training properly much earlier, asked Luke. He always had this doubt in his mind, and now that Edgar was answering everything, it was time to ask. Do you think the necklace is an old family heirloom? Asked Edgar with an amused smile that pissed Luke off. Yes, what else? It's just an old necklace of no value. When I accompanied your father, it was inside a ring. My powerful soul and the Poe blood, which continues in you, is what keeps me in this world as a ghost, but mostly the Poe blood. If the bloodline ends, my soul will dissipate in a short time. I must rest, and the best rest for ghosts are old objects like this necklace. When your father was about to die, I had to find a new object in which he could find me. So I went to the Poe mansion in Boston. Natasha had no way of knowing which object it was on, Edgar explained patiently. Blood has a lot of importance in this world, thought Luke, remembering that Goody Adams had also told Wednesday that her blood was the key. I understand. How did you know I grabbed that necklace? You could have been stuck in that necklace forever, Luke commented. I gambled, and it was only logical that you would at some point visit your future home. As for Natasha, her mission was to keep you hidden so that you wouldn't be found, or rather that they wouldn't think there was an heir left alive, Edgar replied, and Luke nodded. Lots of information. I'll go to sleep, Luke said wearily. It wasn't dark yet, but a lot of exhausting things happened on that day. He fought Enid verbally, fought Sabrina Spellman to the death, and learned about his family history. The next day's classes were uncomfortable for Luke. He usually hung out with Enid, but with the previous day's fight, the two ignored each other. Enid's gaze landed on Luke several times, but she decided to stay away. She was angry, and although the last thing she said to him could be misinterpreted, she was still upset about Luke's attitude towards her mother. As for Luke, he had no plans to talk to Enid either. He felt no guilt. Enid's father and siblings had had a great time, so why should he be to blame if her crazy mother got mad over some stupid jokes? They were both very stubborn and would not back down. It was a fight of attrition. The first one to get close to the other would lose. In this way, the days went by. Luke and Enid didn't speak to each other and continued to ignore each other. What's wrong with you? You look sad, said Yoko, who was having breakfast together with Enid and Divina in the cafeteria. Nothing. I just remembered that Luke loves apples, and I always peel them for him, said Enid in a depressed voice, looking at the apple on Divina's plate. Yoko and Divina looked at each other and sighed slightly. They were already aware of Enid's fight with Luke. These days, Enid was glued to them, and that was weird since she was always with Luke. I should have picked a banana, Divine muttered. Can't he peel an apple? Asked Yoko with a raised eyebrow. No, he's very clumsy. He always ends up making a mess, said Enid with a smile, remembering Luke trying to peel an apple. Look at the expression you get when you talk about him, thought Yoko with a roll of her eyes. Although she didn't entirely like her best friend's boyfriend, she couldn't deny that Enid was very happy with him. So, if Enid is happy, is she? Stop behaving like 10-year-old kids and sort yourselves out. It's your first fight, and it looks like it's the end of the world, said Yoko forcefully. I'm not talking to him, said Enid, stubbornly crossing her arms. Then stop bringing it up every 10 seconds, Yoko muttered irritably. They couldn't talk about any subject, as Enid always related it to Luke or something she did with him. Ugh, I miss him so much, muttered Enid, leaning her head on the table and looking towards Luke, who was eating breakfast next to Xavier and Ajax. At the other table, "I'm getting tired of seeing your depressed face," said Xavier as he took a bite of his toast. "I'm not depressed. My face is the same as always," Luke growled. "Still not talking to you with Enid?" asked Ajax, and Luke nodded. Ajax was Sabrina's boyfriend. That is, of the person who tried to kill him, but Luke didn't care. It was better that his assassin was Sabrina since he could defeat her. It had been a week since he stopped talking to Enid. At first, he thought he would have no trouble ignoring her, but he was very wrong. He thought that by not having to put up with Enid's enthusiasm in the mornings, he would be better off, but that wasn't the case. "Do I miss her?" thought Luke in confusion. He never thought his mood could drop so low just by not talking to Enid. Just be a man and talk to her. "I always do with Bianca, and look at me, here I am," Xavier said with little patience. He could no longer stand Luke being around all day like he had no soul. He couldn't play video games, and at the archery club, everyone noticed Luke's performance was down these days. This is the 21st century. Relationships should have gender equality. "Why does the man always have to come forward to apologize?" said Luke, who had no plans to talk to Enid no matter how much he missed her. "Whatever," said Xavier, knowing Luke's stubbornness knew no bounds. "Peel this apple for me," said Luke, passing a red apple to Xavier. "You do it," said Xavier. He didn't feel like it, and he wasn't good at peeling apples either. "TSCH, that's mean," said Luke with a grimace. "I kind of miss her," thought Luke, looking slyly towards Enid, who was sitting with Yoko and Divina. "Why aren't they here yet?" thought Luke in annoyance. He was currently on the rooftop waiting for Xavier and Ajax. For some unknown reason, they had summoned him here. Since he had nothing to do and had gotten into a fight with Enid, he decided to come. Luke leaned against the railing and surveyed the Nevermore landscape. It had been over 7 months since he had arrived here. They had tried to murder him twice, but it was a better place than he had originally thought. He already knew who his assassin was. Luke wanted to know beforehand how Sabrina would try to assassinate him, but he still couldn't practically read minds. So, he had to keep training on his blue aura. Also, before reading Sabrina's mind, he must take her somewhere alone and knock her out. Then, he will have to create new memories and erase the others. It is a very complex issue. I wonder what Enid is doing, Luke thought. This feeling of homesickness didn't please him, but he couldn't control it. He never thought that someone so lonely could get to miss a person. Just then the door opened. Luke turned around. He thought he would meet the silhouette of his two friends, but he did not. The person who walked in was Enid, the person he was thinking about just seconds ago. Enid was surprised to see Luke. She quickly turned and wanted to open the door again to escape, but it had been locked. "Open up, Yoko," said Enid, making more force in her grip about to break the lock. "Don't break school property, or the principal will punish you," said Yoko from the other side with a mischievous smile. Enid, hearing this, stopped her strength. It'd be bad to break the door. She doesn't want to be punished. "Luke, fix your problems with your girlfriend," exclaimed Xavier from the other side of the door. "See you, Luke. We'll play a game later," said Ajax, who was also on the other side along with Xavier, Yoko, and Divina. "These guys," thought Luke with a frown, and approached the door. He heard the footsteps of the others leaving the place. He was trapped next to Enid. Although he could open the door with his current telekinesis, he would play dumb. "Should I break the lock?" asked Luke, playing dumb as if he couldn't open the door without breaking the lock. "No, it's bad to break school property," said Enid, walking away from Luke and sitting on the floor against a wall. Luke followed her and sat at a distance neither near nor far. "What do you want?" asked Enid, trying to sound as nonchalant as possible. "Didn't you hear them? They seem to want us to get fixed up. That way they'll open the door for us," replied Luke. "Sooner or later, they'll open it for us," said Enid as if she didn't care. "Do you want to stand here for hours in silence?" asked Luke with a raised eyebrow. "I don't care," replied Enid dryly. However, in reality, she did want to be here for hours, since she would be with Luke, and it had been a long time, only a week, since they had been together. "You sure are stubborn," Luke commented. "You're more so," said Enid. "No, you surpass me. I doubt it. I've never seen you accept a mistake of yours," Enid said, and Luke frowned. It might not be that far from the truth. As for Enid's mother's case, it could be that he was a little over the top with the jokes, especially when Enid before Parents' Day had told him what her mother was like. He could have tried to be a little more respectful and kept the jokes to himself. This he had noticed, and in a normal case, he would have approached Enid apologizing, although this does not detract from the fact that it would have been a very difficult task for Luke, as his pride is too high. He did not do it for another reason. The Spellmans. The Spellman's daughter tried to murder him at school. In the future, Enid could become another target to kill, as she is his girlfriend. These days, he is debating whether or not to end his relationship with Enid. That way, he would make her safe for the future. His father became his mother Sophie's boyfriend at Nevermore. Sophie died because of the Spellmans. Not only that, the Umbrio family did not accept that Sophie was with John, as they knew of the grudge between the Poe family and the Spellman family. They didn't want to get involved, and even more so when their daughter was joining the losing side. He doesn't know if Enid's family will be aware of this, but as soon as they find out, the same story will be repeated. "I'm sorry," said Luke after thinking about all these things. "What did you say?" asked Enid in surprise, looking at Luke for the first time. She had heard it clearly, but wanted to hear it again. "Don't make me repeat myself," Luke replied. It was the first time he had ever apologized honestly in his life. "Come on, please." "I didn't get to hear," insisted Enid, moving closer to Luke, who turned to look at her. After many days, he could see her face so close to him again. "I said I'm sorry," repeated Luke, looking at Enid. "Apology accepted," said Enid with a bright smile. "I'm sorry too, for the last thing I said. I didn't mean what you thought," Enid added worriedly. "Yeah, I know. Don't worry," Luke said, kissing Enid suddenly. It had been a long time since he had felt her lips. Enid was surprised by the sudden kiss. She closed her eyes, forgetting the stupid argument she had with Luke, and enjoyed the moment. After a few seconds, Luke pulled away from Enid and opened his eyes. "Why did you stop?" asked Enid, dissatisfied. It had been a long time since she had kissed Luke. "I have to tell you something," said Luke. "Oh, what is it?" asked Enid, curious. Luke told her that he possessed a blue aura. That is to say that he had mental powers like telepathy. To create a telepathic link with her, they would be able to communicate all the time, and if Enid needed help with anything, he would know right away, as Enid would be able to ask him for help almost instantly. During this time that he trained his blue aura, he got his mental link to have a new function. In addition to allowing mental communication, one is aware of the existence of the other. If the connection disappears, it means that the person is unconscious or dead. In this way, he will be able to protect Enid in case something happens. He will be selfish and will not take the path of separation. "Double aura. That's fantastic," said Enid with great enthusiasm and a big smile. "You're not angry?" asked Luke, as he hid it from her for many months. "Not at all. I'm just happy you told me your secret." "I'm the first, right?" said Enid, giving for the fact that she was the first person to know that Luke had two auras. "Well," said Luke as he told her that Veronica was the first person to find out. He explained to her the reason for this. He needed Veronica's help as she had the books he needed to train his blue aura. Also, the Umbrio family specialized in that aura. Enid was not angry about this. She understood Luke's point and wasn't planning to start another stupid argument. "Create a link with me. We could talk anytime and instantly, much faster than a cell phone and without anyone knowing. Even in class," said Enid with great enthusiasm. "I did the right thing, didn't I?" thought Luke, creating a telepathic link with Enid. Minutes passed as Luke and Enid conversed telepathically. Enid talked more than usual and had a lot of things to tell Luke since they hadn't spoken in days. However, Luke didn't mind. He listened carefully to Enid and looked at her big smile. It was a nice feeling. "Damn, I forgot about those too," Yoko said as she hurried up the stairs. Behind her followed Divina, Xavier, and Ajax. "Weirdly, the door is still in condition," commented Ajax. With Luke's telekinesis and his temper, he could have broken the door if he wanted to escape or even pick the lock without breaking it, though he didn't know if Luke could do this. "That's a good sign," said Xavier. They opened the door and stepped onto the balcony. On one wall, sitting were Luke and Enid kissing. "Oh, we came at a bad time," said Yoko with a slight smile, and Divina chuckled under her breath. Looks like our efforts did the trick, commented Xavier with a smile. Damn, I didn't hear the door open, thought Luke sheepishly, looking at the three people who had just arrived. Enid also looked at them with a blush on her cheeks. Go on about your business. Luke, buy us something in the cafeteria tomorrow, Ajax said as they walked off the roof with the others. The first Poe Cup took place in 1897, and from that year on it would be held every year as a school tradition. This important competition would take place over a week. The Poe Cup is an annual race on the Jericho River by Nevermore in which 4 teams compete against each other. Each team represents their dorm, and they select the name of an Edgar Allan Poe poem for their team name. Each team must choose 4 students from their dorm who will represent the team, which is considered a high honor for the students. Nevermore contains 4 dormitories with a large number of students in each dormitory. 2 male dorms and 2 female dorms. In each dorm, there are students from 9th through 12th grade. Luke is in 9th grade, so he is among the youngest. Usually, in this very important competition for all students, 4 representatives are chosen, and they are always from the higher grades, from the 11th or 12th grade. However, this time, there was an exception in the Ravenloft dormitory. Luke was chosen to be part of the team that would represent his entire dorm, a rare occurrence, as usually the younger students are not selected to participate. Everyone in the dorm agreed that he should be one of the participating members of the race. Everyone except Luke. Luke didn't like being the center of attention and had little enthusiasm for participating in a race and winning the cup. His school spirit was 0. However, because of his last name, he had to participate. His last name was in the name of the cup. At the very least, to increase his fallen family's prestige, he had a responsibility to participate. This is what Edgar was telling him, who was very insistent and annoying. Because of him, Luke ended up agreeing to stop bothering him. His team was called El Dorado, a poem Edgar wrote shortly before his death. That is, before he fought to the death against the Spellman brothers and destroyed a town in the process. Luke was in one of Nevermore's courtyards polishing and painting his canoe with the other team members and dorm students. It was a team effort. Hey, Luke, hand me the silver paint bucket, exclaimed Xavier. As an artist, he was in charge of the model and was the best at painting. Luke, who was sitting on a log looking unfriendly, made the silver paint bucket start floating toward Xavier. Thanks, said Xavier, starting to paint a section of the canoe silver. He then looked at the model and nodded, satisfied with his work. What do you think? Asked Xavier. Luke looked at the canoe, which had the appearance of a spooky-looking armored horse. Trying to draw a horse in a canoe was not at all easy. He thought it looked like a very good job, and it was discernible that it was an armored horse and not something else. That's fine, Luke said. He wanted to sound more enthusiastic, but couldn't. He was already there hours ago, surrounded by enthusiastic and rowdy people. The team leader was one of Enid's brothers, who was in 12th grade. Try to sound more convincing, Xavier said with a grimace, though he wasn't angry. He had met Luke during this time, and while he might have sounded half-hearted, he wasn't. Looks like your social battery is running low, commented Ajax with an odd smile, passing a glass of juice to Luke and Xavier. Thanks, said Luke, taking the glass. He didn't deny Ajax's statement, as he was right. Luke took the juice as he watched Xavier and Ajax arguing about the canoe with other students. I hope that bitch didn't control Ajax, thought Luke looking at the Gorgon boy. By bitch, he meant Sabrina, who was currently dating Ajax. With her red aura, she could manipulate Ajax's emotions to control him like a slave without him noticing. Luke doesn't want to have to fight Ajax and the snakes in his head. One foolish mistake, and he would be turned to stone, though it's not forever like the Medusa myths, since Ajax isn't strong enough, but it's long enough for Sabrina to assassinate him. Most likely in the race for the Poe Cup, Sabrina would try to assassinate Luke. From what the blonde told him earlier, she hated being at this school. Most likely, she is impatient and wants to get it over with as soon as possible. The race is the perfect opportunity, as they must head to Raven Island with the canoes. A perfect place to plan someone's murder. He doesn't know what Sabrina will try, but he must be prepared. Luke couldn't yet read minds at an advanced level, so he didn't know what plan Sabrina had in mind, but he wasn't too terrified of the Spellman girl's strengths. The race may be more fun than I thought, Luke thought with a slight smile. Looks like you're having fun, brother-in-law, said a tall, muscular guy with a big smile. His name was Andrew, Enid's older brother. He was in his last year of school before going out into the real world. Brother-in-law, thought Luke with a strange expression. He was not yet united in marriage to Enid. Great day to paint a canoe, Luke said sarcastically. It was a day off from school and homework. He'd rather be in his room playing video games or hanging out with Enid wasting time. Haha, that's the spirit, said Andrew, not understanding Luke's sarcasm and brutally patting him on the back. Take this, he added, passing a bag to Luke, who raised an eyebrow, not understanding what he needed this bag for. What's this? Asked Luke. All the materials for the costumes we'll be wearing on race day. I need you to give them to my lovely little sister and have her make them, replied Andrew, scratching his cheek. If you ask her, I'm sure she'll agree. She just has to make a few changes and knit here and there, he added. Fine, leave it to me, replied Luke, taking the bag. Enid was very good at making costumes. She had custom-made Halloween costumes months ago. I knew I could count on you, Andrew said, patting Luke's back again. He then went to look at the canoe along with Xavier and the others. The enthusiasm runs in the family, thought Luke, straightening his back. Although it was a different enthusiasm than Enid's, it wasn't much different. Enid, are you busy? Asked Luke, sending a telepathic message to Enid. Luke, Enid said with surprise. She still wasn't used to hearing her boyfriend's voice suddenly in her mind. I just finished writing an article for my blog. Are you done with the canoe? Asked Enid. Just a few details to go. Xavier is taking care of everything. They just use me to reach things for them with my telekinesis, Luke replied with a slight grimace. Telekinesis is very useful for everyday things. Do you have something to do? Asked Enid. Usually, she would tell Luke to see her right away since they were both done with what they were doing, but she noticed that it could get pretty intense at, No, I'm free. Can I come to your bedroom? Asked Luke. He only visited Enid's room a few times. He had to violate the law that men could not visit women's bedrooms. So he wasn't to be caught. Yeah, sure. Just wait 10 minutes for me. I'll let you know when you can come, Enid said, enthusiastically ending the telepathic call. Enid was to tidy up her room. 10 minutes passed, and Enid told Luke that he could now go to her dorm. He had to be careful that the professor in charge of that dorm room didn't catch him. Luckily, he made it safely to Enid's room. Come in, quick, Enid said, opening the door and closing it quickly after Luke entered. As usual, her part of the room is very colorful, thought Luke, looking at Enid's colorful bed and all her objects that seemed to be in garish colors. Enid shared a room with Yoko, her best friend. Yoko's part of the room was very minimalistic with simple colors. The room was the same room Enid would share with Wednesday in a couple of years. Yoko's not here? Asked Luke. No, she must be in Divina's bedroom, replied Enid. They should make it official by now, commented Luke, setting the bag aside and sitting on Enid's bed. People close to Yoko and Divina had noticed that the two girls were in some sort of secret relationship. They were most likely afraid of others' prejudices since they were two women. Yes, we are already in the year 2021. If the outcasts were like normies, they would accept her without much trouble. To that you have to add that they're a siren and a vampire, said Enid, getting on top of Luke and interlocking her arms behind his head. Two totally different species and both female, Luke commented with a thoughtful look. He had grown accustomed to Enid's approaches by now. Although it was the year 2021 and same-sex relationships had become more normalized than in the past, that was for the normies. The outcasts were more closed-minded on such issues, especially because of offspring. It's not the same for a vampire and a vampire to have a baby as it is for a vampire and a siren to have a baby. The bloodline will be weaker. You have to be very lucky for the baby to have genes from both. Biology works in a very strange way if you ask Luke, but this is what Edgar explained to him and what was explained to him in class. On the other hand, outcasts take offspring very seriously. Your family might begrudgingly accept two different species marrying, but if people have the same gender, how the hell do they have offspring? Outcasts have a low population. They can't afford for their sons or daughters to have no offspring. That's the thinking of most outcasts. Even unlike normies, there are still arranged marriages between outcasts of the same species. If in the hypothetical case Luke likes people of the same gender, would be the end of the Poe bloodline. Would Edgar or another Poe ancestor agree? Of course, they wouldn't. Are you in favor of two different species becoming a couple? Asked Enid with some trepidation in her tone. One of the reasons why she wanted Luke to like her mother was because of this issue. Her mother was a conservative through and through. It was clear that she would never accept Luke in the future. So far, she didn't say anything to Enid, as she thinks it's a school romance. Nothing serious. Of course it is. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here with you. Besides, I grew up in a normie orphanage. I don't care about the ideals of different species of outcasts, Luke replied after a few seconds. Although his confidence wasn't very high, he managed to hide it. Luke, although he didn't have outcast parents who could teach and instill these customs in him, he was able to learn them from Edgar. He noticed that his great-great-grandfather thought the same way as the others. Although Edgar didn't show it in his calm, nonchalant attitude, Luke knew that in the future he would pester him about marrying a psychic to carry on the Poe family legacy. After all, the Poe family was a family of psychics. As for Luke, he didn't want his bloodline to end because of him, but it's an issue to worry about in the future. He's still young. Great. It'll be just us against the world. I don't care what my mother says. We'll get married and have wolf and psychic children, said Enid with a big cheer and a smile. You're thinking too much about the future, thought Luke, who only nodded with a slightly forced smile. Time passed, and they chatted about different things while wasting time. Luke told her about the suits they needed, and Enid happily agreed. She wouldn't let her boyfriend have a second-hand suit on race day. Later, Luke went back to his dorm, and the days passed. The day of the Poe Cup finally arrived. It was a beautiful day. There was no cloud in sight, and the temperature was pleasant with light winds. Luke had already changed into the communal costume he would wear with his team. The costume was that of a medieval knight. They were all dressed in the same outfit, clothes that appeared to be shining armor, able adorned, and a fake sword strapped to the belt. El Dorado tells the story of a valiant knight who sets out on a quest about a legendary place called El Dorado, where the streets are said to be paved with gold and wealth is abundant. That's why they dressed up that way. Enid had custom-made the costume for each member of the team. She only did it for Luke, as otherwise she wouldn't help a rival dorm no matter how much her older brother is there. Just as he was about to go to the river where he would start the race with the others, he got a telepathic message from Veronica. Come to the statue of Edgar Allan Poe. I need to tell you something. It will be quick. Luke was surprised at Veronica's telepathic message. It had been a long time since they had used their telepathic link. Since they were both Blue Aura users, they created a link so that when Luke asked her for a book, the message would be sent much faster. I had forgotten that the link was still alive, thought Luke, replying with a simple, okay. He didn't know what Veronica would tell him. Ever since she got mad at him that time Sabrina tried to murder him at the gym, they hadn't spoken again. I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back, Luke said to Andrew, the team captain. They were already on their way to the river. At a fast pace, he arrived at the statue of his great-great-grandfather, which was the entrance to the Nightshade Society. Veronica was already waiting for him. Veronica was dressed as a treasure hunter. The name of her outfit was The Gold Bug. A well-known poem by Edgar Allan Poe is about the adventure of an individual who finds a coded message stating the location of Captain Kidd's fabulous treasure. Nice costume, Luke commented with an amused smile. It was rare to see Veronica in commoner's clothes. She was born in a cradle of gold and always dresses very fancy with jewels, necklaces, and rings. The same for you. The last thing you would be is a knight in silver armor, countered Veronica with a slight sneer. Since when did she get so good at talking back? Luke thought, getting to the point, you should be careful with Sabrina. She might try something. I don't know the girls in the other dorm very well. They rarely let a ninth grader participate, said Veronica. Well, you're an exception since the cup has her last name, she added. I know. Who knows if she used her red aura to manipulate one of those girls to become one of the representatives of her dorm. Anyway, whatever she tries won't succeed. I already defeated her once. I can do it one more time, Luke said confidently. He didn't know what method Sabrina would use to attack this time. Whether she would use hags or some dark creature, or she would take matters in her own hands like last time. The worst Luke could think of was that she would have perfectly controlled the older female students in that dorm and used them to attack him. However, the latter is unlikely. To manage in just a few months to get control of 3 older students she barely talks to would be very difficult for her power level. Luke had not told Natasha about Sabrina's attack. This was at the request of his great-great-grandfather. According to Edgar, it would not be at all beneficial for the housekeeper to know that there is a killer inside the school. It would be best to leave Sabrina at the school as if nothing happened and let Luke try to survive her assassination attempts. That was the best form of training, or so his wacky great-great-grandfather said. It's good that you have confidence. Another thing, be careful with Tommy, said Veronica. What about your boyfriend? I don't think I've done anything to piss him off, except threaten his girlfriend with a +18 video, said Luke. He's not my boyfriend anymore. We broke up months ago, said Veronica in an angry tone for some reason. Then what? Asked Luke. As far as he knew, Veronica didn't tell Tommy anything about him threatening her and having a banned video from when the two of them did it at Nightshade Society. You beat up 2 of his juniors. The video got all over the school. If it wasn't for me stopping it, he would have wanted to pick a fight with you. That also made him more upset because it made him jealous that I stood up for you, Veronica explained. Jealous? We're family, Luke said with a grimace. Damn, outcasts should have some shame. Well, that's the way it is. Now that I'm done with him, he seems to be always angry and depressed. He may seek revenge against you. Be careful. He's a 12th grade werewolf, Veronica added. He's a student in his last year. He must be stronger than that werewolf named Brad. Veronica seems to like seniors, thought Luke. Veronica was a 10th grader. That is, Tommy was 2 years ahead of her. Brad was also a 10th grader, so Tommy should be stronger. All right, I'll keep an eye on him. He's Andrew's direct rival anyway. He'll take care of it, Luke said lazily. His assassin was Sabrina, not some stupid jealous werewolf with his ex-girlfriend's familiar. Fine, let's go or we'll be late, Veronica said, grabbing Luke's arm and walking towards the competition site. Hey, if we get there and he sees us together, he'll be more furious, said Luke, complaining about being dragged. With your great strength, you will solve it, said Veronica sarcastically and without stopping walking. They arrived at the place, and it was already crowded with students. There were 4 tents. One was green, 1 red, 1 blue, and the last one yellow. A few meters away from the tents was the jetty on the river next to the 4 canoes, each with a different design according to the team name. Luke and Veronica split up, each headed for their tent. Tommy seemed to be in his tent, so he didn't see that the 2 of them were together. Their teams were having their final strategy meeting. Luke arrived just in time as Andrew began to explain how they would go about winning this race and bringing glory to their dorm. 10 minutes later, representatives from all the teams emerged from the tents as motivational music played. It sounded like the orchestra was doing their thing. They do give importance to this race, thought Luke, feeling many eyes on him. It was normal the cup had his last name on it. He could see Sabrina's team wearing red robes and spooky white masks. It looked like a Halloween costume. Everyone wondered if they could see well with those masks for the race. Luke recognized Sabrina as she was the shortest of them all and by her blonde hair. The mask did not cover her hair completely. However, he also recognized another person from Sabrina's team, a girl with blonde hair with pink and blue highlights at the ends. Enid, thought Luke in confusion. He didn't know that Enid was one of her dorm reps. It was already strange for a 9th grader to be chosen as part of the team. Now, in Enid's dorm, there were 2 9th grade representatives. Enid in her white mask looked up at Luke and greeted him enthusiastically. Surprised? She asked through the mind link. Since when are you a representative of your team? Asked Luke. It was last minute. Sabrina managed to convince the older students. As much as you are my boyfriend, I will show no mercy in the race, replied Enid with a competitive spirit. Luke heard that Sabrina had something to do with it and had a bad feeling. Come on, Luke, said Andrew, nudging Luke in the back. Luke reacted and climbed into his canoe. Positioning himself in the middle in front of him was Andrew, and in the back were the other 2 members of the team that he barely knew their names. They each took their paddle and waited for the signal from Principal Weems. who was standing in front of all the students. I want to welcome you to the Edgar Allan Poe Cup. It is one of the proudest traditions at Nevermore, and it began 123 years ago. Larissa said enthusiastically. In front of her was a microphone so that representatives from each team could hear her. You must cross over to Raven Island. Take a flag from the Crackstone Crypt and return without sinking or being sunk. The first team to cross the finish line with their flag wins the cup, bragging rights for a year, and some special privileges. Let the Poe Cup begin, said Larissa, extending her arm to the sky where she held a gun and fired. Bang! Everyone started rowing enthusiastically, trying to reach Raven Island as soon as possible. Everything was allowed in the race. Luke paddled without paying much attention. He was only looking towards the canoe where Enid and Sabrina were. Ever since he saw his girlfriend as a representative of her bedroom, he started to get a bad feeling. What is this bitch planning? Thought Luke, more nervous than before. He wasn't afraid to confront Sabrina's plans. He was confident in defeating her. But if Enid was involved, it was different. He didn't want Enid to get hurt. He never thought he would have such a strong weak point. Everyone at Nevermore saw that Luke spent all his time with Enid. Then next to Xavier and Ajax. It was clear that Enid was the person closest to him. His Achilles heel. Why are you paddling with your arms? Use your power, exclaimed Andrew, watching out of the corner of his eye as Luke paddled with little strength. Huh? Oh yeah, I forgot, Luke said, snapping back to reality. With his telekinesis, he began to control the two oars. The speed increased by far. Andrew's physical strength was excellent. His arms are muscular, and Luke could see that they were suddenly getting bigger and sprouting hairs. Partial transformation. Thought Luke a little surprised. Just like Enid has her claws sharpened when she gets angry, someone else moving forward could transform his entire arm into that of a werewolf, getting a tremendous increase in strength. More advanced werewolves didn't need a full moon to convert. What they did is that at full moon, the transformation is inevitable and more powerful than normal. So young werewolves use it to achieve their first full transformation. The average first transformation is at the age of 15. Luke's canoe took first place. His team consisted of 2 werewolves, a Gorgon and him, a psychic. His task, besides paddling with his telekinesis, was to protect the boat from enemy attacks. With his telekinesis, he was the perfect person for that. If possible, he should attack the others. Should I destroy Sabrina's canoe? Thought Luke. That way Enid would never reach the island and would be safe from the Spellman girl's plans. The problem was that he had no usable object to control with his telekinesis and attack the canoe. He could use a psychic slashing blow, but it was easier to defend against. Take this. Luke heard a scream, so he turned his head. He saw Veronica's ex-boyfriend, Tommy, with a furious expression. His arm was transformed into a muscular, hairy werewolf arm. Tommy thrust his werewolf arm into the water. With a powerful movement and using his claws, he generated a wave that rose to a height of 4 meters. Is that even possible? Thought Luke, surprised by Tommy's strength. Brad was a little shit next to him. I got this, exclaimed Andrew, making a similar move to Tommy. With his werewolf arm, he generated a wave of roughly the same height. The 2 waves head towards each other with unstoppable fury. Hold on, shouted the Gorgon boy, bracing for impact. The 2 waves collided with a deafening roar, sending a shower of water droplets in all directions. The waves break up into white foam, scattering in all directions and sending concentric ripples along the river. The 4 canoes are shaken by the force of the impact, reeling momentarily before stabilizing again. Do they want to kill someone? Thought Luke. With his telekinesis, he helped his canoe keep its balance and not be pushed backward. Thanks to this, their team managed to take the lead. The bad thing was that they became the target of the other 3 teams. Sabrina created 2 fireballs and launched them at Luke's canoe. What weak fireballs? Thought Luke, deflecting the fireballs with his telekinesis. He made them head towards Tommy's canoe. It was useless to send them back to Sabrina's canoe, as she could undo them. These fireballs were very weak compared to the ones Sabrina showed when she tried to assassinate him in the gym. They were even weaker than the ones she showed when she showed up in class several months ago. Damn psychic, growled Tommy, using water from the river to extinguish both fireballs. However, this caused him to lose time and be overtaken by Veronica's team. He does hate me, thought Luke with a grimace. Tommy did not recreate a wave of 4 meters or more to attack Luke's canoe, as it would only cause them to get further ahead by the impact of the remaining waves. Good job, brother-in-law. Keep paddling, there's not long to go, said Andrew with a grin, seeing Raven Island closer than ever. Daphne, the captain of the archery club and representative of the dormitory, along with Veronica, launched several arrows at Luke's canoe. Their goal was to shoot several holes in them to sink it. I'll take those 2 arrows, said Justin, the other member of the team, and a werewolf just like Andrew. With his claws, he managed to shatter both arrows. However, there were 3 more incoming arrows that he would not manage to intercept. Luke was already ready to stop them with his telekinesis. It was not a difficult task. However, a voice rang in his mind, commanding him to stop. It was the voice of Veronica, who was using mind control. In the past, Luke would not have been able to defend himself and would have stopped his movements, which, even if it was a couple of seconds, was enough for the arrows to hit his canoe. But to Veronica's bad luck, Luke recovered in less than a second. This was thanks to his improved mental defense. He was spending so much time training for a reason. He deflected the 3 arrows and sent them at a higher speed towards Sabrina's canoe. He had to take advantage of the fact that he now possessed sharp objects with which to attack. To help him in his training, Veronica thought, grumpily as she noticed that Luke quickly recovered from her mind control. The talent she saw in Luke was great. He could already defend himself from her mind control. He wasn't someone normal. Sabrina tried to burn the arrows with fireballs, but Luke changed their trajectory and made them dodge them, heading back to their target. Why is she acting so weak? Luke thought doubtfully. Just when he thought his arrows would hit Enid's canoe and sink it, one of the older students stood up and made a motion with her hands. She created telekinetic waves to deflect the trajectory of the arrows, causing them to hit the river and sink. Her control was precise and fast. A telekinetic, Luke thought with a grimace. He managed to watch as the telekinetic waves were manipulated. The race to Raven Island continued. It was very fierce, and any miss could end up causing your canoe to sink, and you ended up with moderate to severe injuries. Luke thought this race was much more brutal compared to the Wednesday series. The students would use every method necessary to attack you, sink your canoe, and get first place. Thanks to Luke's telekinesis and the strength of Andrew and the other werewolf, they made it to Raven Island in first place. Luke and I will look for the flag. You guys take care of the boat, Andrew said as a canoe docked at a jetty on the island. The other 2 nodded, and Luke, along with Andrew, started running towards the center of the island. Although Justin, the other werewolf, would have greater speed thanks to his superhuman werewolf strength, Luke possessed telekinesis, a more useful ability for the battle that would break out on Raven Island. Yes, battle. Luke couldn't believe it when he heard it from Larissa's mouth. The other participants could attack the others as long as there was no danger to life. The other 2 would guard the canoe, as the others could attack it, and when they arrived, it would be sunk. After Luke's team arrived, Veronica's team arrived. Veronica and Daphne went down without wasting any time. Thirdly, Tommy's team arrived and jumped before reaching the pier and launched at high speed. He would not lose, and in the process teach Andrew and that arrogant kid Poe a lesson. In last place, but not that far behind third, came Sabrina's team. Enid and Sabrina were the ones who went down and started heading towards the center of the island in search of the flag. As Sabrina stepped ashore, an invisible barrier covered the entire Raven Island. The barrier was not even visible. The members of the waiting canoes did not notice it. Now the real game begins, thought Sabrina with a smile behind her mask. Luke was running alongside Andrew in the direction of the crypt. The island was covered with dense vegetation, with trees swaying gently in the breeze. The sun's rays filtered through the leaves. Luke again heard an angry shout similar to when they were in the canoes. It was again Veronica's annoying ex-boyfriend running at an incredible speed without caring where he stepped. This time, he partially transformed his body into a werewolf's form. His arms and legs were covered in hair and strong-muscled. Only his torso and head were missing, and he would be a 100% werewolf. His body was taller than normal because of his transformed limbs. The aura that enveloped him was heavy and intimidating. TSCH, how annoying, Luke thought with a grimace. He felt Tommy's fury was directed at him as he looked at him as if they were mortal enemies. I'll take care of it. You run to the crypt, Andrew said with a grin, running toward Tommy. Tommy, shouted Andrew, partially transforming into a werewolf like his enemy. Luke kept running without looking back. He heard a loud rumble, most likely when the two werewolves collided. He had long ago learned that Wednesday's world was much stronger and more dangerous than the one he had seen in the Netflix series. Poe's run in the series was very uneventful. There weren't these intense fights over trying to grab the damn flag. Luke, with his extrasensory ability, managed to see two arrows heading towards him at an ever-increasing speed. He turned his head and, with his telekinesis, deflected them without much difficulty. Hey, that's going a bit far, shouted Luke, looking toward Veronica and Daphne, who were chasing him. Both girls were surprised that Luke realized that two arrows were heading towards him. The boy was running, making noise. How did he notice? All's fair in the Poe Cup. I'll show no mercy because you're my junior, Daphne said with her usual icy expression. Luke clicked his tongue slightly and kept running. All three were psychics, though he was a year younger, with a head start. He would get to the crypt first. Then he would see to his safe return to the canoe. I can't order him to stop if I don't make eye contact with him, Veronica said with a frown. It doesn't matter. He'll have to take the flag and turn around. At that point, we will intercept him, said Daphne, and Veronica nodded. You're slow. I'll go ahead, added Daphne, starting to run faster. A girl shouldn't have muscles, said Veronica, justifying herself. Unlike her friend, she didn't do much physical activity. She was a rear-end person with a blue and green aura. Luke finally made it to the crypt. Joseph Crackstone's crypt was carved out of rock that already had a weathered appearance and was covered a bit with the island's vegetation. It had an ancient and mysterious appearance. Around the crypt, two humanoid statues stood more than 3 meters tall. They had robes and hoods over their faces. Most strikingly, they had huge wings on their backs. Luke couldn't stop looking at the crypt and wondering if the Crackstone madman made deals with demons, if the statues represented demons or whatever crazy theory. Two sticks with banners were heading towards his head at an incredible speed. If it weren't for his clairvoyant aura, it would be impossible for him to have been able to observe them. As he was about to defend himself from the murderous sticks that wanted to pierce his head, two precise arrows broke the sticks. Daphne arrived on the scene and stood next to Luke, looking into the crypt. Luke was also looking at the crypt with a serious face. 6 unidentified people with black robes and hoods covering their faces stood in the crypt, looking at them. One of these people was holding the flags and was the one who attacked Luke suddenly. Whoa, you were able to destroy the sticks with those arrows. Girl, you got some skill, that person said. His tone of voice was husky, and his height was about 6 feet tall. This is private land. You can't be here, Daphne said, looking cautiously at the unfamiliar group of people. She sensed a dark aura about most of them. These were not guests who want a cup of tea. Hiding our faces with hoods and masks is for a reason, don't you think, said another of the people in a mocking tone. This person was lanky and of slim build. Don't tell me they're from the Academy of the Dark Arts, thought Luke. In his questioning of Sabrina, he managed to learn that the Spellman girl attended this academy, which was much more extreme than Nevermore. Perhaps she asked for help from her crazy friends to help complete her mission, though it didn't make much sense, because the girl always seemed to be confident that she could kill him easily. The other option is that they are members of the Spellman family, which is also a valid option. Luke, without thinking twice, controlled with his telekinesis the fragments of sticks that were thrown at the large man. The speed surpassed that of the man who covered himself with his X-shaped arms. Hey, easy, famous guy, said the man, his tone hiding astonishment. He could only take cover. He couldn't have tried to dodge. His skin is tougher than normal. A werewolf, thought Luke. He had 6 enemies that would most likely be here to assassinate him. He had to know what abilities they had as soon as possible. He could find out if he used his clairvoyance, but the ability to see the powers of others is visible, and he doesn't want Sabrina to know he has another aura. He's not sure if he'll be able to kill everyone. He does not want hooded people to escape and have information that possesses more than one aura. "Who are these people?" asked Veronica, finally reaching the crypt. "People who want to kill me," Luke thought, but said nothing. "Enemies, get ready," replied Daphne, putting 3 arrows from one in her bow. "Kill, kill, kill," whispered 2 of the hooded men as they crouched down a little and put their hands on their heads. "It is no longer possible to control its bloodlust," thought one of the hooded men sitting on top of the crypt. His figure was smaller and more delicate. "Kill those 2 girls," said the hooded person. His words seemed to have special powers over the 2 hooded men, who seemed to want to murder at all costs. It was as if the chains that once bound them had been destroyed. "Kill, kill, kill, kill," they shouted, breaking the hood and exposing their faces. These were 2 ugly old hags. Hags again? This time it's 2 of them, Luke thought with a frown, watching the hags launch themselves at Veronica and Daphne. Another thing that struck him as odd was that the hags were very patient until that small-built person ordered them to kill Veronica and Daphne, as if he could control them. He had no more time to think as 2 hooded men attacked him. One was the one who attacked him earlier with the flag sticks, and the other was the "You're ours, famous writer," shouted the burly man, crushing the place where Luke was before. Luke, to dodge the blow of this person who surpassed him in physical strength and speed, used telekinetic waves to push himself. It was a strange feeling to be hit by the very telekinetic waves that you control, but if you control the power well, it is as if the wind pushes you gently without doing much damage. He could only track her movements thanks to his observation of hockey. If he only had his telekinetic aura, he wouldn't be able to dodge it and would have to fight head-on. "Luke," thought Veronica worriedly, looking towards Luke, who was attacked by 2 sane enemy people, not like the hag. "Pay attention, Veronica," shouted Daphne, defending herself from a hag attack. Veronica turned her attention back to her battle and noticed that she had a hag a medium distance away from her. The hag stretched out her arm and swung at her. "That attack is not going anywhere," thought Veronica confidently. What she didn't expect was that the hag's arm stretched out to reach her stomach and hit her. Luckily, she managed to take a step back and lessen the impact of the blow. Luke was paying 100% attention to their fight. It was a 2 versus 1. Nothing was clean, but it was to be expected from their enemies. 2 of the hooded people stood in the crypt, watching the whole situation. To Luke's surprise, he was at a disadvantage. He wanted to immobilize or send the attacking strongman flying, but his telekinetic waves were stopped. This was because of the lanky man who was making gestures with his hands and was only following his companion. A kind of support. "He's a faceless one. The perfect outcast to counter a telekinetic," said Edgar, coming out of the collar and watching his descendant fight. "I know. You don't have to tell me," said Luke with a grimace. In his time at Nevermore, Luke learned the power of the faceless, a type of outcast who, as the name implies, is faceless. These outcasts have the power to alter matter. This allows them to change the physical form of objects or create them from nothing. The ability Luke's faceless enemy is using is to distort space with his manipulation of matter at the molecular level. This way, he stops Luke's telekinetic waves that want to immobilize or send his partner flying. What an annoying ability, thought Luke, looking at the lanky guy with a frown. The desire to crush this faceless one was growing more and more. "Stop dodging, you bastard," shouted the hulking man, striking Luke with his sharp grip. Luke was pushed by an invisible force at just the right moment, managing to dodge his enemy's blow. Since he launched the telekinetic waves at the right moment, he didn't give the faceless man a chance to interfere with them. Besides that, the faceless one has a range of distance. He would have to be close to Luke to want to stop the very telekinetic waves Luke uses on himself. The hooded man's claws sank deep into the bark, ripping, splintering, and tearing the wood. As it got caught with its claws, it gave Luke time to get to a safer distance and regain some air. With that, "I can be sure it's a werewolf," Luke thought, seeing the hooded man's furry, clawed hand. "How does he dodge Sid's attacks?" thought the faceless one, surprised by Luke's perfect dodges. One would assume that a psychic with a yellow aura wouldn't have the reflexes to dodge the swift attacks of his werewolf partner. He knew Luke used telekinetic waves to push himself, but for this, you needed a huge reaction speed. It was as if Luke knew how and where his partner would attack. "The barrier won't last long. We must finish it as soon as possible," said the faceless one in a low tone near Sid. "Good. He won't get away from me this time," growled the werewolf, pulling his claws out of the tree and leaving a large mark. "Escape?" asked Luke in a cold tone. The earth began to shake intensely. A tree behind Luke began to rise higher and higher, defying gravity itself. The roots, once deeply rooted in the earth, twist and tear as the tree rises, leaving a dark, empty hole in the ground. The tree's branches shake in protest as they pull away from the ground, reaching higher and higher. Finally, a tree over 10 meters and 300 kilograms or more stopped in midair and hovered behind Luke. The werewolf and the faceless one gawked at the floating tree. Though their expressions were not visible, they had masks on. "This is not good," thought the faceless one, swallowing saliva. His manipulation of the matter could no longer do anything. This is because Luke is already controlling the tree. The tree is under Luke's direct control. Besides, no matter how much he wanted to, he couldn't distort space to try to render Luke's telekinesis useless. He would have to be too fast to encompass the entire tree, which was over 10 meters long. "Crush them without mercy," encouraged Edgar from the side. Luke didn't hesitate. The tree sped toward the two hooded men, who could do nothing to avoid it. A deafening roar was heard as the tree crashed into the hooded men. The ground shook under the impact, and the earth rose in a cloud of dust and fallen leaves. Both were sent flying through the air like kites. The werewolf grunted in pain as his muscles tensed to resist the impact, but it was all to no avail. He went rolling across the ground at high speed, leaving a trail of dirt in his wake. The faceless one twisted in midair before crashing into a nearby tree with a thud. He lifted that tree in a matter of seconds. "The information we had from his power is wrong," thought the faceless, feeling pain all over his body. His condition was not good at all. The werewolf was in better condition, as his physique was superior to that of the average outcast. However, he could barely stand up. A blow from a 300 kilograms or more tree at a fast speed is no small joke. A normie would have died with that attack. "They're still alive," Luke muttered in surprise. He didn't think they could survive such an attack. He wouldn't have. His body is only slightly better than normies. The werewolf has stronger bones and muscle tissues than another kind of outcast. The faceless one managed to create a kind of shield that protected him from part of the blow, said Edgar, who had seen everything. Luke went back to controlling the tree he threw earlier. It was easier since he didn't have to exert as much force when pulling it out of its roots. He had to deliver the coup de grace. He didn't know where Sabrina's fucker was. Just as Luke was about to deliver the coup de grace to one of the hooded men, a person appeared. "Luke, what's going on here?" asked Andrew. His appearance wasn't very good. It looked like his fight with Tommy had been intense. Luke, in his battle against the two hooded men, had moved away from Crackstone's crypt and the others. "They are enemies that attacked us out of nowhere," Luke replied without taking his eye off the werewolf and him faceless, who was trying to get up so as not to be crushed again. As he was about to deliver the coup de grace, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye as Andrew lunged towards him, throwing a blow with his sharp and deadly claws. The speed was slower than that of the hooded werewolf, but as Luke let his guard down, thinking he was with one of his allies and watching for his prey not to escape, he barely managed to dodge the blow. Andrew's claws slashed Luke's chest. His medieval knight costume rips in strips at that part, revealing skin scar by the claw marks. Luke, with an expression of surprise and pain, stepped back quickly, blood gushing from the wound. Thanks to his observation, Hockey managed to move a few centimeters. Otherwise, the claws would have sunk deep into his chest, and it would have been a mortal wound. "What the fuck?" Luke thought as his girlfriend's brother lunged with murderous intent towards him again. He quickly threw the tree at his new enemy. He didn't know if it was Andrew or if he was being controlled, but he didn't want to die. Andrew, or whoever was, jumped the tree, but Luke instantly moved it to follow his movement and hit him. The werewolf used his muscular, hairy, X-shaped arms to cover himself. He was sent flying into a tree. Damn, it hurts. Luckily, I have more than one aura, Luke thought, looking at the bloody wound on his chest. Before he knew about auras and more of the outcast world, he thought that with his telekinesis, he would be invincible. He wasn't. Although his telekinesis was powerful, there would be death by now if not for his observation hockey. A white aura ability. Telekinesis had great offensive power, but the defensive had a way to counter it, such as immobilization or sending a person flying with telekinetic waves. Luke wanted to learn about a telekinetic shield, but Edgar, for some reason, didn't want to teach him such a technique. "Your power is amazing," said Andrew, getting up. His arms were in shreds, with blood and bones popping out. He had a maniacal grin on his face, and looked like he was amused to be in that state. "Who the hell are you?" asked Luke with a frown. He knew they weren't manipulating or controlling Andrew, since his personality couldn't change that much. "My name is Amaranth." "A pleasure," Andrew said as his face began to change. His stature dropped, and his bone structure became smaller. In front of Luke stood a girl about his age, or a little older. Her skin was pale, her hair was snow white, and her eyes were blood red. Her delicate, previously injured arms healed at an incredible speed, until they were in perfect condition. Luke was dumbfounded for several reasons. First, the change of form. Second, the fast healing reminded him of the first which he faced, although it wasn't as fast. Third, because of the girl's appearance. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had never seen a girl with such a peculiar beauty. First of all, it is almost impossible to find a person with white hair and blood-colored eyes. Amaranth's face was perfect. Her facial features had no imperfections. "Whoa, I didn't expect to find a half-breed," Edgar commented, observing Amaranth. He didn't care about her beauty. He was a ghost hundreds of years old. "Half-breed? What do you mean?" asked Luke. "She's a shapeshifter and a vampire," replied Edgar. "What? How do you know she's a vampire?" asked Luke. He agreed with the shapeshifter thing, since he saw how she transformed into Andrew and had seen Natasha transform into other people before. Her pale skin, white hair, and red eyes. However, that's the least of it. Normal shapeshifters can only take on the appearance of others, but cannot match the strength and powers of their targets, Edgar began explaining. On the other hand, a shapeshifter and vampire can, at the same time, match the power of the target they were transformed into. This is achieved by taking their blood. Although it will not achieve 100% of the strength, and the effect does not last forever, Edgar finished saying. Edgar couldn't explain further, as Luke was in the middle of a death match and didn't have time for a class. "Let's see how your blood tastes," said Amaranth, sucking her index finger where it had Luke's blood on it, since with that hand she had attacked him before. "Will she be able to copy my appearance and abilities with just that blood?" asked Luke. "Don't worry. She needs to drink a lot more to copy your abilities. She should bite your neck with her fangs," replied Edgar. Delicious. I've never tasted such delicious blood," Amaranth said with a mad grin. Amaranth began to lick her hand full of Luke's blood with great speed and an expression of pleasure. "Delicious, delicious, delicious, delicious," muttered Amaranth, licking all of Luke's blood from her hand. Her body seemed to be writhing as she tasted the blood. "She's crazy," thought Luke, backing up a few steps. Finally, Amaranth had no more blood to lick and looked at Luke with eyes of desire. "Can I have some of your blood?" "It won't hurt," Amaranth asked longingly. Any man seeing Amaranth's longing expression would tell her yes instantly, but Luke was grimacing. He did not respond. The tree he used earlier began to float again. "Oh, you're a difficult boy. That makes me want you more," Amaranth said with a longing look at Luke. "Amaranth, we must finish him as quickly as possible," said the faceless one, arriving at his companion's side. Thanks to Luke being distracted, he managed to get to his feet, though he was still badly wounded and would be a liability in battle. "Yeah, half-breed bitch, stop playing around and get serious," said the werewolf with fury in his tone. His condition wasn't very good either. "Shut up, you shit. "I do what I want," said Amaranth, making a 180-degree attitude change. Her tone was cold, and she looked with disgust and disdain at her companions. Luke was about to take advantage of the enemy's discussion, and he had grouped up. He could take out all three in a single tree strike, but just at that moment, another person arrived. "Stop if you don't want your companion to die." Luke turned his head and stopped midway through the floating tree. This was the person of short stature and a small build who ordered the hags to attack Veronica and Daphne. Next to him was Enid, imprisoned. Luke's fury increased when he saw the state Enid was in. Her red robe had several cuts where blood was oozing out of her skin. Luckily, the wounds did not appear to be deep and serious. The white mask was no longer on Enid's face. Her expression looked as if her mother had died. She looked like she had cried a lot. "Enid, are you okay?" shouted Luke, who wanted to crush these bastards, but if he made a move, Enid's life would be in danger. "Luke," said Enid. Her eyes were puffy and red. Her lips quivered as she spoke her boyfriend's name. "Why is she so sad?" thought Luke, not understanding Enid's state. Luke had sent a telepathic message to Enid when he saw the hooded people in the crypt of Crackstone, telling her not to set foot on the island, but it was too late. Then his girlfriend stopped communicating with him through his mind. This could mean she received a major trauma or something similar. "I'm sorry. Sabrina died protecting me," said Enid in a hoarse tone, and tears were again coming out of her eyes. "Sabrina died?" thought Luke with a raised eyebrow. "A memorable sacrifice," said the hooded person in an amused tone. Enid looked at her furiously, but she could not move because of the ropes that bound her whole body. Not even with her superior physical strength could she break them. The rope was not made of a common material. Otherwise, she would have broken them with her multicolored claws. "Finish him," ordered the same person. The werewolf began to move cautiously towards Luke in the same way as the faceless one. They didn't know if this guy would stop attacking just because they had a hostage. As for Amaranth, she kept watching Luke. She had no plans to attack him. She wanted to see if he cared about people or not. When the werewolf swung at him, he dodged it with his observation hockey. He didn't need to use telekinetic waves. The werewolf's speed was very slow compared to what he had at first. No. You're not understanding your position. You can't attack or defend, of course, if you want your girlfriend to be safe," said the hooded person while putting his hand on Enid's shoulder. Luke could see how, from the hooded person's hand, fire came out and burned the area of Enid's man, who screamed in pain. "You bastard, stop!" shouted Luke in fury. In his fury, he couldn't dodge a kick from the werewolf that hit him in the stomach and sent him flying into a tree. "That damn werewolf!" Luke growled in pain. Never in his life had he been in such a deplorable state. However, he didn't care. He had to save Enid. How would he save her? She was about 10 meters away, and the hooded person would most likely have a way to stop his telekinetic waves, like an artifact or some other method. Immobilization or creating invisible objects with his telekinesis would not do. Besides, the moment he did, he would be attacked by the werewolf. Luckily, his strength has decreased a lot since he crushed it with the tree. "That's the trees," thought Luke, closing his eyes and concentrating. With his extrasensory ability, he began to see everything he couldn't see with his eyes. Deeper, under the ground. "It looks like this bastard has already accepted his fate," said the werewolf with an evil grin. He had to get revenge on the bastard who left him in this deplorable state. "Never mind my life, Luke. Don't let them kill you," cried Enid with tears in her eyes. The goal of these people was to kill everyone. It would be the same whether they killed her now or later when they were done with Luke. As the werewolf was about to deliver a killing blow to Luke, the earth began to shake. Finally, the ground cracked as a large number of tree roots emerged from the earth with impressive ferocity, like the tentacles of some creature. The werewolf did not expect an attack of dozens of roots at high speed that pierced his entire body. He screamed in pain and writhed but could do nothing. "Damn you! I told you to stay still," shouted the hooded person, ready to murder Enid. However, under his feet, roots also came out and attacked him and defended Enid. "How did they get here?" thought the hooded person in surprise, and he watched the dozens of roots attack him. Using his fire skills, he managed to fend off the killer roots, but received a few cuts on his cloak and no longer possessed a prisoner. This is dangerous already. He wasn't supposed to be this powerful, thought the Faceless One, seeing more and more roots coming out of the ground. It seemed as if the forest itself was coming to life and attacking them. The roots were as thick as muscular arms and as twisted as snakes. They moved at a rapid speed and with great agility. It gets stronger in battle. His talent is monstrous, thought Edgar, looking at Luke with pride. He managed to save his girlfriend and turn the situation around when it was 4 versus 1. The Faceless One was engulfed by a root and felt like he would be squeezed like a fruit. Luckily, he already had a teleporter in his hand. He activated it without wasting a second and disappeared from the place. Whoa, surprises me more and more. That makes me want him more, said Amaranth, dodging killer roots. Her agility was superior to that of her werewolf companion. However, this is getting dangerous, thought Amaranth, seeing more and more roots that wanted to tear her apart. She realized that Luke's goal was to mercilessly murder them. Amaranth pulled out a faceless-like teleporter from one of her pockets and activated it. She disappeared in a second. The place where she was before was bombarded by roots, but no one was there anymore. TSCH damn rats, Luke cursed, focusing all his attention on the one remaining hooded man he wanted to murder the most since he dared to hurt Enid and threaten him. Why did it all end this way? He shouldn't be so powerful. The hooded man thought furiously as he glared at Luke with hatred. He watched as his companions left the place. His condition was not good either. He was now the sole target of the roots. Although his fire could burn them easily, it would be difficult to burn them all to ashes. At least, I'll kill your girlfriend, thought the hooded man, looking towards Enid. He realized that Luke cared about this girl. He could cause him great pain before he left. Die, the hooded man shouted. From his eyes, he shot out a bolt of fire that pulverized all the roots in its path and shot toward Enid. A ray of fire? Thought Luke in surprise as he looked at Enid. His expression turned ugly. He was controlling too many roots. He wouldn't be able to move Enid with his telekinesis in time, as she was bound and her mobility was reduced. Luke desperately watched as the fire ray moved closer to Enid. Just at that moment, a creature running on all fours jumped out at the last moment, saving Enid from being pulverized. The ground where the fire ray passed through was completely black, with some flames burning. TSCH, she narrowly escaped, thought the hooded person with fury. Now he had to leave this place. His mission had failed. He never thought that what would be a slaughter of outcasts with weak ideals would end this way. You fucking bitch. Will you go now? Shouted Luke angrily, watching as the hooded woman reached into her pocket for a teleporter. With a ray of fire, he knew it was Sabrina Spellman's bitch. Using all his concentration on a single root, he attacked Sabrina. The speed of the root was much greater than before. First, Luke only decided to control that one root, and because of his fury, the root pierced Sabrina's eye, but before it could pierce her brain, the girl disappeared from the spot. Shit, cursed Luke, stomping the ground in fury. A bad choice. He felt great pain in all his bones for doing that. Shit, 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 shouted Sabrina angrily as she pounded the ground with her delicate fists. She felt great pain and burning in her left eye, or rather, where her left eye used to be. Now, it has already been destroyed by the root. Calm down, Sabrina, said the Faceless One, already without the hood. His face had no mouth, nose, or anything. Still, when he spoke, he could be heard, and it seemed as if his closed mouth modulated. Shut up. Why didn't you help Sid kill that bastard? Asked Sabrina, glaring with her one eye at the Faceless One. We tried. At first, my ability countered him, until he lifted a tree hundreds of kilograms, and we couldn't do anything anymore. His power is already at an advanced level. Your information was wrong, said the Faceless One, justifying himself. Sabrina just clicked her tongue and said nothing more. This was her mistake. Her plan would have been perfect if Luke's strength was as she had thought, but it wasn't. And you, why didn't you help Sid? If you had hit the bastard Poe next to Sid, he wouldn't have been able to get up, Sabrina asked, looking at Amaranth. Her tone wasn't as angry when she was talking to the half-breed. I thought Sid was more than enough to finish him off with one blow, but he was useless and ended up dying there, replied Amaranth, lifting her shoulders nonchalantly. Watch your words, half-breed, shouted the faceless one. Sid was his friend, and he had died. Half-breed this, half-breed that. Shut your mouth if you don't want me to open your mouth and rip out your tongue. Do the faceless ones have tongues? Asked Amaranth with a chilling smile. Enough, both of you. It's time to go back to the Academy of Dark Arts, said Sabrina, interrupting the fight. Father will be angry, thought Sabrina resignedly. The sight of the fight between Luke and the hooded people was a mess. There were roots on the ground everywhere, burned parts, and a log lying on its side. Luke rushed over to Enid. The person who had saved her was Andrew, her older brother. He had used a full werewolf form to get a faster speed. Andrew was already in human form, hugging Enid. His condition was not very good. He had several cuts and wounds. Are you okay, Enid? Asked Luke, concerned. Luke, exclaimed Enid, hugging her boyfriend tightly. Ouch, growled Luke at the claw wound he had on his chest. In addition to that wound, he had the occasional broken bone and was out of energy. Controlling so many roots was a big challenge for him. The tree roots were buried deep in the ground, and it took a lot of concentration to control them. He also exceeded his limit because of his fury and hatred at seeing Enid hurt. I'm sorry, said Enid, looking worriedly at the wound on Luke's chest. It's okay. Are you all right? Asked Luke, examining Enid's body carefully. Her only serious injury was the burn on her shoulder, and it was no big deal. Yes, don't worry about it. Just minor injuries. Thanks for saving me, said Enid, suddenly kissing Luke. Luke was surprised by the sudden, passionate kiss, but accepted it. It was a nice feeling after a battle to the death. His anger was subsiding thanks to that and the fact that his pretty girlfriend was okay. Cough, cough, coughed Andrew several times, and the couple broke apart with some embarrassment. Veronica and Daphne were facing two hags. We should go help them, commented Luke. Don't worry. Tommy and Brad are helping them. They should have defeated them by now, said Andrew, and Luke sighed in relief. He didn't feel like going to face two quasi-immortal hags. I don't understand why no one from the school came to the island. They should have realized something was wrong by now, Andrew added. Those guys came prepared. They even had teleporters to get away, Luke said with a grimace. They most likely set up a barrier or something so that no one could enter the island while they were carrying out their attack. But who were they? Why did they attack us? Asked Enid. Andrew shook his head. He had no idea. Luke said nothing. He knew Sabrina's goal was to kill him, and it seemed she brought companions to help her on her mission. Is that guy alive? Asked Andrew, looking toward the hooded man, who was pierced by several roots. It looked like he was crucified, but with roots. I doubt it, replied Luke. The roots must have gone through several of his organs. He would only be alive if he had regeneration like a hag, and that was not the case. Even a hag would have died since so many roots would most likely have gone through the black heart. As for how he felt about murdering a person, or rather, a werewolf, Luke felt no remorse or guilt. It was either that or being killed by that werewolf. A shame. We could have questioned him, said Andrew, shaking his head slightly. Enid looked at the hooded man, pierced by roots, without much emotion. She didn't seem scared to see a dead person, especially since it was someone who wanted to kill her boyfriend and she didn't know him. This is the world of outcasts, thought Luke, a little surprised and relieved at the same time. He thought Enid would look at him as a crazed killer, but that wasn't the case. You said Sabrina died? Asked Luke, looking at Enid. Enid's face returned to a droopy, sad expression. Her eyes became glossy, on the verge of tears. Did those bastards manage to kill someone? Asked Andrew, gnashing his teeth in fury. In his case, because of the fight he was having with Tommy, he was surprised and attacked by a pretty white-haired vampire girl. Because of his distraction, the girl managed to bite his neck and suck his blood. She then swept the ground with him and Tommy and left the scene as she felt a tremor in the earth. Thanks to the half-breed leaving, they were able to recover with Tommy. When Sabrina and I saw the crypt in the distance and the fight between Veronica and Daphne against two hags, we want to go help them, but we were intercepted by that hooded person. He attacked us, but his focus was on Sabrina, began Enid, taking a breath. In one of his attacks, he completely engulfed Sabrina in the fire until he burned her completely, she added after a few seconds, shedding tears and hugging Luke tightly again. This time, Luke kept the whining inside and hugged Enid, patting her back to calm her down. "Let's meet up with the others and head back to the canoes," Andrew said after a few minutes. Enid nodded, wiping away her tears, and they started walking. In a few minutes, they arrived back at the crypt. Two mangled bodies of hags could be seen lifeless. It seemed that Veronica, Daphne, and Tommy knew about the black heart of these abominable creatures. The three of them were sitting on the ground, catching their breath, in not at all pleasant conditions. They had cuts on various parts of their bodies and more wounds. The worst of all was Tommy, since unlike Andrew, he did have to get involved in the battle when he was already wounded. "You two go ahead. I'll go check on the body," Luke said, turning away. Andrew and Enid nodded. A little further away, they could see a burned area and some sort of humanoid figure lying on the ground. Luke moved closer and was finally able to see the body lying charred on the ground. The skin was as black as night. The skin had contracted and cracked under the intense heat. An acrid stench from the smoke and burnt flesh permeated the air, permeating Luke's nostrils. "Disgusting," Luke thought in disgust, holding his nose. "This person is not Sabrina," said Luke, looking at Edgar, who hovered and watched the body. "It's possible. It's hard to find two people using the same skill with the same power." "Use your third eye to check it out," Edgar said. Luke concentrated. In a few seconds, an eye appeared in the center of his forehead. The eye was similar to his normal eyes. It just had a soft, ethereal light glowing around it, as if it were illuminated. This ability was called the Eye of Truth, a skill that every clairvoyant should learn. It allows the user to see the auras and powers of other people. It is not easy to learn. Luke found it more difficult to learn than learning through the detection of intentions for battle, or, as he calls it, the hockey of observation. Looking at the charred body, Luke could see a faint orange aura. With each passing second, the aura became weaker. This was because the person was dead. Just an orange aura. No trace of a red aura. "It's a double," said Luke, clicking his tongue. His third eye disappeared from his forehead quickly. He didn't want others to see it. Luke had already noticed at the canoe race that this Sabrina had a very weak fire, even for what Sabrina had shown at school. On the other hand, he had sensed many similarities between the hooded person who kidnapped Enid and the original Sabrina. As to how she did it, he didn't know, but he didn't care. What good did it do him to know how she implanted a double? With the disguises her team chose, it was easy to plan a double, and her manipulation skills allowed people to willingly sacrifice themselves for her. The person must not have been someone for Nevermore. Surely it was a Spellman minion or something. With nothing more to see, he returned to the group. When everyone had regained their energy, they started walking to the canoes. No one was thinking about the Poe Cup. What had happened here was a big scandal. The trip was silent. Everyone was processing what had just happened. A Nevermore student was killed by unidentified people. The only one who seemed unaffected by this was Luke, as he knew it was all a hoax. Even though the dead person was real, there were two dead people. Only one of those people was one of the attackers. No one counted hags as equal beings to normal outcasts. Halfway through, they encountered a large crowd of people. The other team members, Principal Weems, and all the teachers. They were horrified to see the state of the students, and more so when they heard about the attack by the strangers and that one student had burned to death. It was a long day for Luke. Thus, the 125th edition of the Poe Cup came to an end. Without a winner, the most tragic Poe Cup since the competition was created. The month of May had begun. It had been a few days since the end of the tragic Poe Cup, where Sabrina Jones was burned to death in an attack by an unidentified group. Luke learned that Sabrina was an orphan psychic. That was her false identity, just as Luke lived in a normie orphanage. Luke didn't know whether to laugh at this. It seemed she copied his background. It was rare to see orphan psychics, but that didn't mean they didn't exist, and the last name Jones was common in the normie world. The days following the attack were very busy. Many parents came to Nevermore to see their children. So did the authorities. Not normie authorities, authorities from the outcast society. Luke met the outcast cops for the first time. They had not appeared in Wednesday's series. He was questioned by them, not by criminals, as a witness to the incident. He was not the only one. All the students who were at Raven Island had to converse with the outcast police. So, you used your telekinesis to control the roots and murder the hooded man who was a wolf shoulder? Asked a middle-aged man with a serious face. His beard was somewhat unkempt, and he wore a black uniform with a distinctive badge on the right side. Yes. Before he attacks me with his huge claws, Luke said, emphasizing that part. Don't worry. You won't have charges against you. It was self-defense, and there were witnesses. Otherwise, you would have ended up like your classmate, said the man. Luke nodded. The outcast rules were too different for his luck. Even though he killed a person, he wouldn't even get a punishment. I don't know why I'm surprised. They let two major families be at war and try to exterminate each other, Luke thought. They obviously didn't know that the Spellman family had dealings with demons, so they let him fight the Poe family, turning a blind eye. They wouldn't let them fight in a public place and innocent people die, but as long as they kept the matter private, the police and the powers that be would pretend nothing was going on. He controlled dozens of roots that totaled over 1,000 kilograms and finished off a werewolf, a faceless one, a half-breed, and an elemental psychic. A genius, thought the middle-aged man. I will look into the story you told me earlier. If it's true, the Spellmans took their grudge where they shouldn't have, said the policeman with a stern expression. Luke nodded slightly. In the first interrogation, he told him that the person who tried to kill him was Sabrina Spellman, and it wasn't the first time she had tried to kill him. He told him about the incident at the gym, but in that case, since it was just the two of them and their grudge, it would be okay for Sabrina to act. But it is not the same in this incident where they directly attacked Nevermore, as if they were terrorists and endangered the lives of several students from dangerous families. In telling this story to the policeman, Luke received information that left him confused. According to the cop, the Spellmans do not have a daughter named Sabrina who possesses a dual aura and attends the Academy of Dark Arts. Luke wanted to find Sabrina, or whatever her name was, grab her head, and slam it repeatedly against the floor. The bitch had lied to him in the interrogation he'd done in the gym. He should learn how to read old memories as soon as possible to be much more effective at getting information. He also learned that the werewolf, the one he killed, does not belong to the Academy of Dark Arts. So he's not a schoolmate as he first thought. According to Edgar, they must be hidden servants of the great psychic families. If they had been schoolmates, they would have risked a lot, since they could identify them without much problem if they have the corpse of the person. Thank you for the information. I will look into it, but next time try to find tangible evidence, said the policeman. He couldn't blame a large psychic family like the Spellmans for such an attack without such evidence, but it wasn't crazy to think that they would want to murder Luke. As a high-ranking agent in the outcast police force, he knows about the old grudge between the Poes and the Spellmans. He doesn't think it's the Spellmans, though. With a little information, he learns that when John Poe attended Nevermore, the Spellmans did not attack him. Nevermore did not suffer terrorist attacks, so it would be strange if they do now, although he would not rule out the possibility 100%. It's nothing, Luke said without giving it much thought. He did not mind revealing this information. The bad news is that he had no tangible proof, but if the outcast police investigation leads to the Spellmans, it could put them in a difficult situation. He has nothing to lose by trying. This is my card. If you have new information and evidence, call me, the policeman told him, handing him a black card with his contact details. Fine, Luke said, putting the card away. The policeman opened the door for him, and Luke left the room. Why is there no protection for minors? Luke thought as he walked out the door. Even though he is a minor, he must face the Spellman family alone and with no recourse to third-party help. The only way to get everyone to turn against the Spellmans is to prove they're making deals with demons or through the power of friendship. What a joke. Who would want to help him take on such a powerful family? The Umbrio turned their backs on Sophie, their mother, and let her die along with John. Although in this case, the Spellmans involved third parties putting the lives of the students at risk, if you have no evidence to catch them, nothing will happen to them. Despite Luke's story, since he has no tangible proof, he will not receive any help until he presents it. although the cop is aware of the grudge between the Poes and the Spellmans. Next, Enid Sinclair, said the middle-aged man. Luke saw Enid sitting on a bench near him. She stood up and started walking toward the room. She waved her hand at Luke and walked into the room. Luke looked at the bench again. There was one more person. Enid's mother, Esther Sinclair, was looking at him with a frown. Oh no, why me? Thought Luke as their eyes made eye contact. That's why Enid gave him a low hand wave. When she was with her mother, she was much more shy. He would ignore her, but they made eye contact, and if Esther tells Enid that he ignored her, he'll fight later, and that's the last thing he wants. Hey, what's up, mother-in-law? Said Luke, and he wanted to punch himself against the wall as he listened to what she said more carefully. Calling this grumpy, untrusting woman mother-in-law was not a good way to start conversation. I'll never be your mother-in-law, Esther said, standing up and looking at Luke with a blank face. Whatever you say, I was just saying hello. Bye, said Luke, seeing the perfect opportunity to escape. Wait a minute, said Esther, and Luke turned around. What? Asked Luke. If you really love Enid, you should leave her, replied Esther, taking Luke by surprise, who wasn't planning on having this kind of conversation with his mother-in-law. What do you say? I think Enid would have to decide those things for herself, said. I know a little of the history of the Poe family and the old grudge they have with the Spellman family. Your mother was from the Umbrio family, and she died because she was with your father. I don't want the same thing to happen to my daughter, Esther said tactlessly. Her instinct told her that this incident had to do with Luke. Besides, they took her daughter hostage. Why did they do it? To threaten Luke. She wasn't the only one who thought so. It was to be expected, Luke thought. You should say you'd help your daughter's boyfriend's needy family. Well, the Umbrios didn't help my mother either. I wasn't expecting anything anyway, Luke said after a few seconds. His old concern was rekindled again. Earlier, he had raised the issue of Enid's safety and that they might use her against him as a hostage, and it happened. That day, he decided to be selfish and continue his relationship with Enid. He was hesitant now, but he would not show Esther. He would not give her that pleasure. Esther was surprised at Luke's calmness. If Andrew didn't appear, Enid would have been killed by Sabrina's fire ray, thought Luke, who was still looking at Esther in silence. The atmosphere was tense, and not a single fly was flying. After a few seconds, Luke settled his thoughts and decided to speak. Don't worry, I'll grant your wish. I don't need Enid's help or yours to annihilate those bastards. If they didn't take her hostage, I could have killed them all, Luke said with a look of hatred and gritted his teeth. He could only kill one. He wasn't satisfied when he defeated them all and had a great chance. Maybe he should have taken a chance and used his blue aura so they couldn't get away with the teleporters. But if he failed, they would know he possessed 2 auras. Esther took a step back. She was shocked at the murderous intent of releasing a 14-year-old teenager. Sabrina knew of Luke's weakness and used it against him. That was his mistake. He wouldn't let it happen again. In a few weeks, I will end our relationship. She saw a classmate die recently. Having her attractive boyfriend leave her will put this one in a worse state of mind, Luke said, turning around and leaving Esther alone. Esther looked at Luke's back in surprise. At one moment, he seemed to see Enid as an obstacle, and at another moment, he showed concern for her mental state. When Luke reached the end of the hallway, which was not far from where he had his little conversation with his former mother-in-law, he noticed another familiar person. Veronica Umbrio. Veronica was looking at Luke with a rarely seen expression on her face. She looked like she had overheard the conversation. Luke looked at her for a second and continued on his way. He wasn't in the mood for a conversation. Hey, wait up, said Veronica, catching up to Luke. The girl had her left arm bandaged, a couple of band-aids on her face, and several bruises all over her body. What do you want? Asked Luke without pausing. We need to go to Principal Weems's office, replied Veronica. We do? Asked Luke hesitantly. Yes. We have my father, my grandfather, and your housekeeper waiting for us, replied Veronica. Natasha? Thought Luke with a grimace. The last time he'd seen her, he'd gotten a big lecture from her. She was very angry that he didn't tell her about Sabrina Spellman being undercover at Nevermore. If it were up to him, he would have told her, but Edgar told him not to. According to him, it was to have a fight that would put you over the edge. He wasn't wrong, though. After that battle, His powers grew at a crazy rate, much better than training. For the second time, he managed to lift over 1,000 kilograms with his telekinesis. The first time was with the SUV. Also, this time he managed to control the dozens of roots for much longer. His maximum in that battle was about 400 kilograms, and he lifted more than 1,000, controlling the roots with precision and digging them up. This achievement made his maximum weight grow by several levels. These days, he went to the gym and was able to lift over 800 kilograms. His strength more than doubled. It is hard to believe. According to Edgar, it was normal since, in a situation of stress and adrenaline, he managed to control more than 1,000 kilograms for several minutes and with precision. So, it was normal that his maximum weight had this substantial increase. His clairvoyance abilities also improved as he used them in battle. His blue aura abilities remained the same since he didn't use them. "All right, let's go," Luke said dryly, heading to a new destination. The last thing he wanted was to be reunited with his mother's relatives. His mother's father and her brother would be Luke's uncle and grandfather. Luke was sitting in Principal Weem's office. There were Natasha, Veronica, the principal herself, and two people Luke didn't want to converse with. His grandfather and his uncle are on his mother's side. His uncle's name was William Umbrio. He was older than Sophie, Luke's mother, and Veronica's father. He is an elegant, well-dressed middle-aged man. He had a neat beard and sky-blue eyes, just like Luke. To Luke, he is like the stereotypical successful businessman who plays golf and laughs like a millionaire. He wasn't far from the truth. The Umbrio family were millionaires with a presence in the normie and outcast worlds. William's face was serious and slightly frowning as he examined Luke, the son of his deceased sister. At no time did he show any affectionate emotions towards his nephew, even though it was the first time he had seen him. His grandfather's name was Stanley Umbrio, the current leader of the Umbrio family. His face was wrinkled. His hair and beard were white, and he had sky-blue eyes. He wore a white formal suit with a tie. Stanley's expression when he saw Luke changed and showed much more emotion than William's. In his grandson, he saw a strong resemblance to his daughter, Sophie. "So, Luke, are you all right? I heard from Veronica that you got injured against those hooded men," asked Stanley in a concerned tone. He sounded like a grandfather concerned for his grandson's health. "Yeah, great. I'm almost dead, but I feel great," said Luke in a sarcastic tone. "Respect your grandfather," said William in a stern tone. "Grandfather? Don't confuse things. I do not consider you my family," Luke said with little patience. What he was missing was that now these strangers wanted to resume their family ties with him. After 14 years, the atmosphere in the room fell into an uncomfortable silence. "I didn't gather you here to have an emotional family reunion," said Natasha, breaking the silence. "What did you call us here for, traitor?" asked William in exasperation. Like Luke, the last thing he wanted was to continue to have ties with the Poe family. It was not good business. "Traitor," repeated Luke in confusion. "Yes, traitor. Your housekeeper was a servant of the Umbrio family. Or do you think your father, the last member of the ruined Poe family, would have a servant? Of course, he wouldn't. She followed my sister into the Poe family's personal war. We are putting our family in a very awkward situation," William explained with some derision. "Well, I didn't know that," thought Luke without giving much importance to the mockery of his nice and sympathetic uncle. For what he heard from Edgar, Natasha was closer to his mother, so it made sense that she belonged to the Umbrio family. "That's enough, William. Why did you ask us to meet here, Natasha?" asked Stalin, looking at Natasha. "For you to read this," Natasha replied, pulling out 2 old rolls of paper from one of her pockets. Both rolls were old. They looked to be several years old since they were used. "What is this?" asked Stalin, taking one of the rolls passed to him by Natasha. The other roll she handed to Larissa, who looked on in confusion. Luke had no idea what was going on either. "The last 2 letters Sophie wrote days before her death," Natasha replied. Stalin's hand shook, and he looked at the letter with some regret. Larissa also seemed to go through many emotions as she looked at the letter. "Why are you handing them over now?" asked William cautiously. "I got them back recently. When I returned to Jericho after many years, this was the right time for them to be read," replied Natasha. Both Stalin and Larissa unrolled the letter, which was long, and began to read it in silence. The atmosphere in the room was silent again. William approached his father and read the letter. "What does that letter say?" asked Luke, mentally having a bad feeling. "Something that will save us time to fight the Spellmans," replied Natasha. "I thought the Poe family's problems should be solved by the Poe family," said Luke, remembering an old phrase Natasha said when she talked to Larissa months ago in this very office. "Just shut your mouth," said Natasha with a slight frown. She said that phrase referred to normal Poe family grudges, like vendettas, family wars, and the usual stuff. However, when demons are involved, it's different. It's already a much bigger problem. At the time, she met with Larissa months ago and said that phrase was because she couldn't tell her that the Spellmans were making deals with demons. Instead, she will now read Sophie's letter. "How about my mouth shut?" Luke said through his mind. "You're very annoying when you put your mind to it. Just shut your telepathic mouth," said Natasha, rolling her eyes. "Is this true?" asked Stalin, who finished reading the letter. His eyes were shining. It seemed that at any moment, a tear or two might escape his eyes. "Why didn't she ever tell me? I would have helped her no matter what," Larissa said, wiping the tears from her eyes. "Father, this doesn't make any sense at all. Is the prestigious Spellman family making deals with demons? Impossible. My sister wants to manipulate you so that the Umbrio family will help the Poe family with their war," said William, raising his tone of voice. "Why would she tell you after she's dead?" asked Natasha angrily. "I don't know. Who knows what was going through her head? Those accusations are very serious. A simple letter saying that the Spellmans make deals with demons is not enough," said William. Silence. "Why didn't Sophie tell me this before?" asked Stalin regretfully. If he had known sooner, he would not have abandoned his daughter. Unlike William, he did believe Sophie's letter, because she didn't want to put the Umbrio family in a difficult position. She knew she needed hard evidence so that the Umbrio could intervene directly, replied Natasha. "And why did she write this without any hard evidence?" asked William. "Didn't you read the letter?" asked Natasha. William looked at Luke for several seconds, clicked his tongue, and stopped looking at him. "What was that?" thought Luke. "All right, I'll comply with Sophie's last request," said Stalin, putting the letter in one of his pockets. "Father, we can't do that. That will show that we will take a stand against the Spellmans. A war is not good for our family," said William in disbelief. "The decision is made, William," said Stalin in an irrefutable tone. "I don't want them to face the Spellmans. I just want Luke to spend his summer vacation at the Umbrio farm. You know, a grandfather sees his deceased daughter's grandson for the first time. That position will keep the Spellmans from freaking out, and they won't want a war," Natasha explained, and Luke's expression turned ugly. He didn't want help from anyone, and, as he was about to speak, Natasha kept talking. "I want you to know that the thing about Sophie's letter is real. You can believe it or not. For now, that would be all the help we need." "Fine, we'll do it," nodded Stalin. After a few more words, the entire Umbrio family left the room. Luke was still silently processing what had just happened. "I believe Sophie's words. I will help in any way I can," Larissa said in serious tones. "Thank you. I won't ask anything of you for now. I don't think it goes without saying, but keep everything under wraps. Until we have proof, we can't bring this information out in the open." "It's very sensitive," Natasha said, and Larissa nodded. "If they accuse the Spellmans of making deals with demons without any proof, it would put them in a worse situation. The Spellmans would be perfectly justified in attacking with all their might in the face of such unproven accusations." Luke and Natasha left Larissa's office and began walking down the halls of Nevermore. "Why?" asked Luke. He was not at all at ease about having to spend his vacation at the Umbrio farm. Natasha didn't even ask for his opinion about this. "You've been attacked 3 times already, twice at Nevermore. If you stay in Jericho, you're not safe, and even less so now that you've put a Spellman's eye out," Natasha replied, and Luke regretted telling her about that part of the battle. "Where's the evidence my parents collected?" asked Luke. If they had that in their hands, they could show it to the world, damage Spellman's reputation, and make the authorities keep an eye on them. It wasn't that Luke was afraid to take on the Spellman on his own, but it wasn't logical. He was only one person 2 if you count Natasha. The war with the Spellmans is about 170 years old. How many members do the Spellmans have? There must be dozens of members, and the final boss is still alive since he got immortality through his satanic deal. If more former members made demonic deals that granted them immortality, he would face more people. No matter how super powerful he is, he would die when facing dozens of members, some with demon-enhanced powers, and the person who killed his great-great-grandfather, who knows what power he has now. I don't have them in my possession. I'm tracking them down. It won't take me long to find where they hid them, Natasha replied, biting her lip. You don't have them in your possession? Asked Luke. No. Your parents were hunted down by the Spellmans and killed. Before that, they had to hide the evidence they had collected. I wasn't with them because I was babysitting a stupid crybaby. After they died, I had to change my identity and hide with you, Natasha replied. I'm not stupid, muttered Luke. Do you hate my father? Asked Luke after a few seconds. What's with that question? Asked Natasha with a raised eyebrow. Well, you were very close to my mother, and her getting together with my father got her involved in a war against the Spellmans, and she ended up dying, replied Luke. I didn't like your father at first. If you're part of the old outcast families, it's easy to find out about the silent war that was going on between the Poes and the Spellmans. None of the Umbrio liked your mother wanting to marry your father, who was on the losing side, Natasha said. But your mother didn't care about that. She found out the real story, and her reasons for being and fighting with your father became stronger. I, as your mother's servant, followed her and believed in her judgment. I was not wrong, she added. MMIC, Luke said. Worried about your wolf girlfriend? Asked Natasha. It's not that. I'm going this way, Luke said, waving goodbye to Natasha. It's hard dealing with teenagers, Natasha muttered, shaking her head. After today's class was over, Luke left the classroom and began to make his way to his dorm room. It was only a short time before exams and the end of the school year. As he turned one of the hallway corners, he could see a makeshift altar of sorts. In the center was a smiling photograph of Sabrina Spellman, or rather, Sabrina Jones. Many flowers of different colors decorated the picture. There were 4 red candles lit, and they didn't seem to melt. We will miss you. Read Luke, one of the many dedications and phrases written near the altar. What a joke, thought Luke with a slight wry smile. Everyone thought Sabrina had died, but she had not. She was still alive, and she was the one who wanted to kill everyone because she wanted to kill him. Since the information he told police and school personnel about Sabrina Spellman could not be confirmed, it was maintained that Sabrina Jones died. Why are you smiling? Luke turned his head slightly and saw a girl with freckles and a very short stature looking at him with a very unfriendly face. Well, I remembered what a great and good person Sabrina Jones was, replied Luke in an overdone tone. You weren't close to her, the freckled girl said. She was one of Sabrina's best friends, and she never saw Luke near Sabrina. I know. The above was sarcasm, Luke said without changing his expression. You think my friend's death is funny? The girl asked angrily. Friend? My goodness. Ignorance serves a purpose. The trauma would be greater if she knew the real Sabrina is still alive and hates her, thought Luke, shaking his head. Luke's gesture only made the short, freckled girl angrier. Her friend, who was observing the situation, had a frightened expression as she looked at Luke. Sorry, we're leaving, said the girl, taking her friend, who seemed to want to attack Luke, as a very bad idea. Anna, what are you doing? Asked the freckled girl as she was dragged away from Luke. Are you crazy? Do you want him to kick you in the face like that werewolf boy? Or worse, he could murder you, Anna said, looking back in fear. She sighed in relief when she saw that Luke didn't chase after them. I can't hear you, thought Luke, not giving it any more thought and resuming his walk to his bedroom. He noticed several eyes on him. When he looked at them, they all averted their gazes as if he were going to murder them right now. Luke was aware that his reputation since the incident on Raven Island had taken a turn for the worse. Worsened in the sense that everyone now fears him more than before. Before, it was due to his horrible, grumpy, and sarcastic personality. Now it was because he murdered a person. Even though outcasts had a higher tolerance for death and murder compared to normies, a murder was still a murder. He would get looks of fear in either normie or outcast society. Although in the former, it would be much worse. It's better than before, Luke thought. When he attended normie school, he always had to face bullies. Now no one would go near him. When he reached his room, he collapsed on his bed. His face sank into his pillow, and he closed his eyes. Luckily, Xavier wasn't around, and he could sleep without needing to engage in conversation. "Aren't you going to training?" asked Edgar, coming out of the collar and looking towards Luke, who looked like a corpse. "No, later," Luke replied. "Are you still suffering for love?" asked Edgar, sighing slightly. "It's not that," growled Luke with little patience. "Oh, come on. It's been over 10 days since you broke up with that colorful girl," said Edgar. Yes, Luke had ended his relationship with Enid. He complied with Esther's request. It was not a pleasant situation at all. He was uncomfortable and felt a pain in his chest as he watched Enid cry and asked why he was doing it. He couldn't tell her, "Because your grumpy, nagging mother asked me to, or my crazy enemies will want to use you to blackmail me and then murder you like my mother." "Shut up. You've been depressed for months without leaving your house." "Besides, I'm just tired," said Luke, putting a pillow over his face. "That was a very different situation. My wife that I lived with for many years died." "You brat," said Edgar indignantly. "Oh, I forgot about that part," said Luke, pissing Edgar off even more. "I understand it's your first love, but you'll grow out of it. They're usually passing love." "I was more surprised that you have feelings," said Edgar. In the last sentence, he muttered to himself. Anyway, it was a romance that would end sooner rather than later. There are two totally different species. It is difficult for such love to prevail. In your case, you must find a psychic to carry on the Poe lineage. "Oh, with your genes, a child with 2 auras is almost assured," Edgar said, imagining the rebuilding of the Poe family. Here we go, Luke thought. His ghost great-great-grandfather would begin to ramble on about the future prodigy children Luke would procreate with a psychic who didn't yet know of his existence. According to Edgar, as Luke possesses 3 auras, his children have a good chance of obtaining 2 auras with ease. "If going to training makes you shut up, let's go," Luke said, getting up from his bed and putting on his collar. As he was about to leave in the direction of the gym, the door to his room opened. It was Xavier. They both stared at each other in silence. "What's up? Where are you going?" asked Xavier after a few seconds. "To train," replied Luke. "Oh yeah, I should have guessed," muttered Xavier. Where else could his kind and sociable friend go? This last was sarcasm. It had to be the world upside down for Luke to be kind and sociable. Xavier realized that Luke's personality, since the incident on Raven Island, is reverting to how it was at the beginning of the school year. That, coupled with his breakup with Enid, makes him growl at you every time he opens his mouth. "In a few days, the Raven. Are you going?" commented Xavier before Luke could leave the room. The Raven is an annual dance hosted by Nevermore at the end of the year. The dance is organized around a specific theme. Normies may even be invited, though it's a rare occasion for a show-up. "I don't want to know about events that have Raven in their name," replied Luke with some derision. "Well, that's true," Xavier said with a slight smile. "However, I don't think some hoods would attack since the fringe police came to Nevermore," he added. "Yeah, I doubt it. Anyway, I'm not going. I don't have a partner," Luke said, shaking his head. The last thing he wants right now is to go to some stupid dance that reminds him of how he kissed Enid for the first time. "I know you don't like dances, and I doubt you want me to go right now. I'm saying this for Ajax. We should support him right now. You know, guys' night," Xavier said, and Luke understood what he meant. Ajax's girlfriend, Sabrina, had died. Calcined. Her body was completely charred. It wasn't Sabrina, though, but only Luke knew that, and other people who did not believe him because he did not present evidence. Ajax's depressive pit is deeper than yours. "Help me out on this one," Xavier added. "I'm not in a depressive pit," Luke said with a grimace. "Fine, I'll go," he added. At least he would put some effort into keeping the few friends he has. "Thanks. It's going to be a good night. The theme of the dance is Gothic." "Try to go dressed like that," said Xavier, patting Luke's shoulder, who nodded. Why didn't they cancel that dance? Luke thought, leaving the room and heading to the gym. 2 hours passed. 40 discs weighing 25 kilograms each were flying around Luke. A total of 1,000 kilograms. Seeing the time, Luke put all the discs back in place. He was sweatier than he thought. He had trained hard today. Congratulations on your first ton, and welcome to level 4, Edgar said with a smile. Thanks. Although to get to the top of level 4, I need 9 more tons, commented Luke, thinking the ranking was wrong. The first level was from 0 to 50 kilograms. Second, from 50 to 200 kilograms. Third, from 200 to 1,000 kilograms. Fourth, from 1,000 to 10,000 kilograms. The differences were getting bigger and bigger. Don't be hasty. Cases of guys your age at the 4th level are rare and seldom seen in history, said Edgar, looking at Luke as if he were a freakish monster. Even he, a 2 or a genius, had not reached that level at Luke's age. Weights at higher levels have more differences because the principle is the same as before. Just on a larger scale or with heavier objects, he added. I understand, Luke said with a nod. He didn't let his arrogance increase with Edgar's praise. The patriarch of the Poe family had talent similar to or superior to his. Even Edgar had monstrous talent and reached a very powerful level, able to destroy a town of 10,000 people in a fight that did not seek that purpose. It's time I learned that, thought Edgar. The days passed. The rave-in arrived. Luke ordered a gothic costume online, but not a lame one to wear that night. The dance was no big deal. When Xavier was saying about Ajax's depressive pit, he wasn't lying. Ajax looked like he could slit his wrists at any moment, and the gothic theme didn't help. Luke tried to be as empathetic and compassionate as possible with his friend Ajax. Although, he ended up being his friend because he was friends with Xavier. No matter. He doesn't know if it worked at all, but he tried. The worst thing was seeing Enid dressed in gothic clothes. It was weird to see her in those depressing black clothes, but I respected the theme of the dance, and she looked beautiful. Luke tried to look at her as little as possible so as not to end up in a similar mood as Ajax. A few days after the rave-in were the exams. They were not difficult for Luke, as he had a trained photographic memory. It was very easy. Finally, the school year at Nevermore was over, and it was time for the students to go home to enjoy their summer. Bad news for Luke, as he was supposed to enjoy his summer at the Umbrio farm, with family members who loathe him, although the feeling is mutual. Several days had passed since Luke left Jericho. He had already settled into the Umbrio mansion. Rather, in one of the mansions belonging to this wealthy family of outcasts. The Umbrio family had important business dealings in both normie and outcast society. So, their wealth was at the top of the outcast families, although their history was not old. Luke stayed in the largest mansion of all, as it was that of his grandfather, Stalin Umbrio, the current leader of the Umbrio family. From what Veronica told him, Stalin is over 100 years old. He is an elderly psychic, and he already has 50 years left to live. So, the old man was already passing a lot of responsibilities to Veronica's father, the next leader. Besides him in the mansion stayed Natasha, but she had left yesterday, leaving Luke with his grandparents, many servants, and Veronica. Yes, her grandmother was still alive and kicking. Sophie's mother. Her name was Elizabeth Umbrio. She had an icy, apathetic look on her face when she met Luke. She barely said a word. She seemed to be against him being there. Luke wasn't disappointed. He didn't expect anything from his family on his mother's side. He was only there at Natasha's request. If the Spellmans dare to attack him at Nevermore, they will likely dare to attack him when he is in Jericho. On the other hand, if he finds himself in the mansion of the leader of a major outcast family, the Spellmans will think twice before attacking. True, they may complain to the Umbrio for getting into personal grudges, but Stalin said he would comply with Natasha's request. The most sensible thing for the Spellmans to do would be to wait until Luke returns to Nevermore and plan another assassination. After all, they won't want to start a war against the Umbrio either. Luke opened his eyes. He saw on the clock on the bedside table that it was 9 o'clock in the morning. He got up lazily and looked at his room. It's not so bad living in a mansion, Luke thought. His room was almost the size of an apartment. It also had a bathroom. After changing and brushing his teeth, he left his room. Today, he had a meeting with his publisher. That was why he was up so early. Carrie has been a resounding success since it was published. The book was averaging between 100,000 to 120,000 copies sold per month. There are still a few months left in the year, and it was already on the verge of reaching 1 million copies sold. For an author publishing his first book, this is something very rare. Even more so when the author is just 15 years old. Luke was on the verge of joining the Millionaires Club. He had a 12% royalty from Carrie. Payments were made every quarter. That is, every 3 months. He had recently been given his last payment as he reached month 9. With Carrie sales alone, he got $1,026,000 US. Unfortunately, there are taxes, and they're not low. He had to pay approximately 25% tax. So, he was left with a final amount of $769,500 US. He had done some advertising where he got paid and had a little more money, but it wasn't quite $1 million, but it was only a matter of time. Damn stairs, Luke thought. That was the only bad thing about a mansion. You had to walk too far to get to the damn exit. Luke, it's weird you're up so early, said Veronica, running into Luke. Yeah, said Luke, stopping for a second and walking again. Hey, wait up, said Veronica, grabbing Luke by the wrist. What? Asked Luke. I was just about to go to breakfast with Grandpa and Grandma. I was wondering, do you want to join us for breakfast? Said Veronica. No, thanks. I have plans, Luke replied, releasing his grip on the girl and resuming his walk. These days, Luke didn't eat breakfast, nor did he eat with his grandparents and Veronica. It was uncomfortable, and he knew he was not welcomed by his grandmother, Elizabeth. In addition, at some dinners, there are Veronica's parents, who are also not very happy with his stay at the Umbrio mansion. His grandfather is Stalin, and although he treats him kindly, their relationship is not great. Luke doesn't blame him. They are both strangers, and he doesn't even want to get along with the old man, so it's normal for them to be estranged. Even the servants looked at him with cold expressions. This doesn't affect Luke, but he won't waste his time eating in a silent environment. He prefers to eat while watching a series or playing video games. As for his cousin Veronica, Luke kept his distance. He was in the mood to make friends when he broke up with Enid. Luke wondered why Veronica was at Stalin and Elizabeth's mansion instead of with her parents. At first, he thought it was because of his presence, him, and his narcissism, but then he realized it was not this. Veronica was here because she was being instructed by Stalin and Elizabeth. Stalin had a blue aura. Elizabeth has a green aura. As Veronica possessed both auras, she was trained by both elders. The girl's position was very high in the Umbrio family, all thanks to possessing 2 auras. Luke could see his grandmother's icy expression change for the first time. This happened when she was talking to Veronica. He could see how rare and important it was to have 2 auras. The Umbrio family had a lot of faith in Veronica. They were grooming her to be the next family leader. Luke's ego grew as he realized the situation was as weird as it sounds. He possessed 3 auras. What face would his arrogant relatives make if they found out about this? The Umbrio family, in its entire history, did not have a member possessing 3 auras. On the other hand, Veronica knew that Luke possessed 2 auras, but she hadn't told any family members. Something Luke was grateful for, or else he would have had to threaten to upload the video. Luke left the mansion and called for a cab to take him to his destination. The Umbrio mansion was located in the state of Florida, in the city of Sarasota. If he could drive, he would buy a luxury car, but he had to turn 16 to get a license. Aren't you afraid they'll attack you? Edgar asked, coming out of the necklace Luke wore around his neck. No, I doubt they will. If they did while I stayed with the Umbrio, they would be stepping on his honor or something, Luke replied as he looked out the car window, facing the ocean. If the Umbrio protected him for his entire life, the Spellman would not stand still and start a war, but if it's for a few months, they would most likely turn a blind eye. And if they attack me, it will make my summer a little more fun, Luke added. Since he finished with Enid, he has devoted more time to training. Every day, he was getting stronger under Edgar's guidance. A 3-aura user is far above average, even for 2-aura users. The genetics for a psychic to possess 3 auras are perfect, which gives Luke incredible talent. This adds to his hard work, and the fact that he is a reincarnated person makes him have enormous growth. Every day, he sees progress, and bottlenecks are almost non-existent. To this, we must add the guidance of a person like Edgar. In his previous life, he was the strongest psychic in the U.S. and trained many members of his family for revenge against the Spellman. Also, his auras make for very good synergy. For example, thanks to his extrasensory clairvoyance ability, he can use his telekinesis on unseen objects. A beginner/intermediate telekinetic could not move roots that were buried several meters in the ground. Since he is not seeing them, this can be done by an advanced telekinetic. However, Luke has no such limitation thanks to his white aura. His blue aura enhances his mind in many ways. Photographic memory leads to better comprehension, which makes learning and training easier, since his comprehension is higher. Edgar said nothing about Luke's reckless comment. He agreed. He saw firsthand Luke's monstrous talent. He knew the extent of his powers. It would be difficult to say that it is impossible for an outcast his age or slightly older to assassinate him. Sabrina Spellman, despite being from the elite family and possessing 2 auras, had no chance of assassinating Luke traditionally. She didn't even make it, being 4 versus 1 and having a hostage. Luke arrived at his destination. He entered a quaint coffee shop overlooking the beach and ocean. A middle-aged man in a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses greeted him from a chair. "How have you been, Luke?" the middle-aged man asked. His name was Josh, and he was his publisher. He greeted Luke enthusiastically with a handshake, and then they sat down. "Order whatever you want." "My treat," Josh said with a big smile. "It's not like I'll be short on money, but thanks," Luke said, opening the menu. He would order a big breakfast. After ordering, Luke looked at Josh. The first time he saw him, he looked like a typical office guy with dark circles under his eyes who works more than 12 hours a day and hates his life. Now, however, he had a grin from ear to ear, a flashy Hawaiian shirt and rock star sunglasses. "Why so happy?" asked Luke. "Isn't it obvious? Your second book is finally finished, and I have other great news," replied Josh with a big smile. Yes, Luke had already finished his second book. Rather, the plagiarism. While at Nevermore, he wrote it thanks to his photographic memory. It was easy, but this time he respected a little more the steps of a writer working with a publisher. He kept sending them unfinished manuscripts. He had meetings with Josh about the book and stuff. He knew he didn't have to, but he had to take some action. His second book would be The Mystery of Salem's Lot, a vampire fiction book. In his past life, it was one of his favorite Stephen King books, although it didn't reach it, Carrie, or The Shining in sales. "Oh, what's the good news?" asked Luke, curious. "Carrie will be brought to the big screen," replied Josh excitedly. "Oh, sooner than I imagined," thought Luke with a faint smile. This means more money for him, as the production company that wants to film Carrie will have to pay for adaptation rights. "How much will they pay for adaptation rights?" asked Luke. He had no power in this. As with his contract with a publisher, they had the bargaining power. However, his contract explicitly stated that he would retain a portion of the adaptation rights. "You're quieter than I expected," Josh said, looking strangely at Luke. Any normal person would jump at the news that his movie would be in theaters. It was to be expected after Carrie had so many sales. "How much?" asked Luke again. $1 million. Josh replied with a slight smile as he saw Luke almost choke on his coffee. "That much?" "The book didn't even make it a year," Luke said in surprise, setting the mug down on the table. He thought at most they would have paid $500,000, not double. "It's for that reason. The book isn't even a year old and already has almost 1 million sales. I'd like to toast with some alcohol, but you're a minor and it's 10 in the morning," Josh said with a smile. As Luke's publisher, he would take a bonus, which, although it wasn't within the percentage, was still the salary he makes in a full year. Plus, he now had Luke's second full book ready to produce, which translates into more money for everyone. Everybody wins, and that's why he's so happy since he's been Luke's publisher. A goose that lays golden eggs. "Let's toast by drinking lots of caffeine," Luke said with a smile, raising his mug. Out of that $1 million, he will get 10%, which is $100,000 US. Even he would have a smile on his face if he got the news that he won $100,000 US. "Cheers," said Josh, raising his cup and clinking it with Luke's. An hour later, the meeting with Josh ended. They conversed about the new novel and the Carrie movie that is planned to be filmed within the next few months. Payments, etc. "What are you going to do now?" asked Edgar as Luke left the coffee shop and started walking. "The day is sunny. We're on the crystal clear beach in Sarasota. I have plenty of money." "Of course, training," replied Luke, and Edgar, who was starting to get excited, grimaced. "How boring. Meet some girl and sleep with her." "To stop thinking about your ex-girlfriend," suggested Edgar. "Sleep with her? I'm 15, man," Luke said with a grimace. He can't even do it with Enid, and he'd do it with a girl he barely knows. "So, I lost my virginity at 13. "You're already late," Edgar said. "I'm not late. The average loss of virginity in America is 17, said Luke. "How do you know that?" asked Edgar, raising an eyebrow. "Photographic memory," replied Luke without further explanation. "I'm not sleeping around anyway. I'll just training," added Luke, ordering a cab to go to his rented house. Let's see how long you last," said Edgar, leaving the subject aside. His offspring had money, fame, and good looks. He was 15 years old when hormones were hard to control, and he began to have more sexual desires. Add to that the fact that he was in Florida in the summer, living alone. The embryo don't care what Luke does, as long as he comes back at night and doesn't disappear. After 15 minutes, he arrived at his rented house. With the money he had, he rented a very large house in front of the beach. The rent was not cheap, but compared to his capital, it was very little. It could not be compared to the embryo mansion, but 10 people could live there comfortably. Luke used it for training and hanging out. Natasha knew nothing about it. Most likely, she doesn't like him living alone, but that's not entirely true, since he then goes back to the embryo. If she finds out, she'll be mad, thought Luke, entering the house and heading to the gym. Yes, the house had its own gym. Luke wasn't training to move more weight with his telekinesis. Edgar was teaching him how to fly. "I'll last more than 10 minutes flying today," Luke said with a slight smile. Flying was great, although his flight time was lousy, and he moved at a snail's pace. Edgar told him that the flying technique is something that telekinetics who are at level 5 begin to learn, while he is at level 4 and has already learned the basics. He can even fly, even if only for a short time. At first glance, it might seem that lifting your body weight would be much easier than lifting large objects. But flying is a completely different and much more complex task. When you move objects, you have a clear and complete view of what you are manipulating. However, flying involves moving your own body. When attempting to fly, you do not have a full view of your own body. You can only see it in the first person, which means you don't have a full perspective of how your body is positioned in space. This greatly complicates the task of controlling telekinetic waves to move in a coordinated and stable manner in the air. So, to learn to fly, the telekinetic must develop an even deeper connection with his telekinetic waves, and usually this is achieved when you are at level 5 minimally, or so the empirical evidence shows. However, this does not apply to Luke. This is thanks to the fact that he possesses a white aura. His extrasensory ability allows him to see his entire body, as if he has a 360-degree view. This is why the flight ability of someone with telekinesis and clairvoyance will be superior to that of normal telekinetics. Luke, by seeing his body from an external perspective, can easily observe how his telekinetic waves interact with his body and the surrounding environment. This allows him to adjust and control his telekinetic waves much more precisely and efficiently, greatly facilitating the process of learning to fly. Training on a beautiful sunny day at the beach. Edgar sighed internally. Although he liked Luke's dedication to training and exterminating the Spellmans at times, he was very extreme. He supposed this was because Luke broke up with Enid and had 2 friends who were far away. "You won't fly today. You're already moving too fast. I'll teach you a new technique," Edgar said, catching Luke's attention. "What is it?" "Go on, say it," said Luke in a rush. Although he didn't like to admit it, he was becoming a training nut. "Psychic barrier," replied Edgar. "Oh, I finally have the level to learn it," said Luke with a smile. His day was only getting better. He had long ago asked Edgar to teach him how to create a barrier to defend against attacks. A shield, like Protego from Harry Potter. According to Edgar, it was an advanced technique that he couldn't learn yet. Yes, said Edgar, going on to explain the theory of the psychic barrier. Go on, give it a try, said Edgar, finishing his explanation. It was shorter and less complex than Luke thought it would be, but he didn't say anything. Luke concentrated, and within seconds a translucent barrier appeared in front of him. The barrier completely covered Luke. It was a 4x4 frame. Just that, thought Luke in confusion. He reached out his arm and touched the barrier. It was as solid as a wall. Congratulations on your first barrier. Now, try to change the shape. Make it cover your body completely, like a half circle, and like that. Bye, said Edgar. Wait a minute, said Luke, stopping Edgar. What's wrong? Asked Edgar. You had told me that creating a simple barrier was difficult. But it's not, said Luke, looking at his barrier, which was still alive. Luke could feel it. Even if they shot him with a gun, the bullet wouldn't be able to break the barrier. Even if they emptied the entire magazine. Did I say that? I don't remember. Bye, Edgar said, stepping into the collar quickly. This damn ghost, thought Luke, clenching his fists. He understood what happened here. His crazy great-great-grandfather always wants him to fight by putting his life on the edge. So, teaching him how to use a barrier would be counterproductive. Immobilization and flying were much more difficult than achieving a barrier. Luke would have learned it on his own, but he had no idea how to do it. Unlike superpowers, here you need the techniques to accomplish such things. Unless you learn it instinctively, like Luke's telekinesis and psychic punch. A month has passed since the summer vacation began. Luke's routine remained unchanged, training in his huge rented house near the beach, eating delicious food every day, and then spending as little time as possible at the Embryo Mansion. Natasha still didn't show up. She sent him a message, telling him she didn't know when she'd be here. She was looking for traces of where Luke's parents left the clues they collected from Spellmans. Luke had become obsessed with training. He spent more time training than playing games or watching series, manga, etc. It was a surprise to him, as he had no one forcing him to do such a thing. This was due to the advances he made in all his abilities. He could fly like Superman, although he was still not as advanced. He was much improved compared to a month ago. He could now go for an hour without touching the ground. His barriers improved a lot. He even looked for different ways to use them. After all, they were solid structures. He could use them to trap a person or crush them against another solid structure. The only person he socialized with was Edgar, and he could only spend 4 hours outside the collar. The rest of the time he trained, or, with his photographic memory, searched for techniques from manga or movies from his past life that he could replicate with his 3 auras. I wonder if I can replicate One Piece's vision of the future, thought Luke, getting excited about having advanced observation haki. Clairvoyance had many similarities to this haki. It should be possible. He can use his sixth sense to interpret the future, even if only for a brief period. In a battle, it would be broken. Yes, it should be possible, muttered Luke under his breath with a smile as he thought of ways to replicate such an ability. He needs to get back to reality, thought Edgar, looking at Luke with concern. A 15-year-old teenager is training in solitary, like a Shaolin monk. Hey, time to buy breakfast, said Edgar, bringing Luke back to reality. Oh yes, Luke said, feeling his stomach growl. Last night, he didn't eat because he kept thinking of ways to use his powers for a possible battle to the death. Go to the cheesecake store. The food looked delicious there, said Edgar. Huh, that's a long way away. I'll go to the nearest store, said Luke. He went there once to try different food. It was tasty, but he had to walk more. If he could fly, it would be great, but he didn't want hundreds of normies watching and recording him. Luke was staying on Lido Key, an island off the coast of Sarasota. To get downtown, he has a 4-mile commute. Thanks to the fact that he bought a bike, he can do it in about 20 minutes. Otherwise, he would have to walk for more than an hour. Come on, get some exercise. The food is worth it, Edgar said, continuing to convince Luke to go there. Fine, I'll go, Luke said. TSCH, you can't even eat, he muttered, annoyed, as he walked out of the house. Step 1 complete, thought Edgar with a faint smile. In that shop, he watched as a pretty girl looked at his grumpy, antisocial great-great-grandson. Although he was antisocial and unfriendly, Luke's looks were very good. Besides, he was famous on social networks, and several people could recognize him. To eat here or to go? Asked the girl with black hair as she looked at Luke. Eat here. Get out of that house with the blinds closed for a bit and enjoy some fresh air, said Edgar quickly. We're in a local. Not in the fresh air, said Luke mentally. Sit near the window and watch the scenery, said Edgar without losing patience. The expensive house I rent has better views, said Luke. Your food will get cold, said Edgar. You have a point, said Luke. Eating cold food was not pleasant. Hello, said the girl. To eat here, replied Luke. Great. In a few minutes, I'll bring you the food, said the girl with a different smile that Luke overlooked. Edgar did notice the change in the girl's attitude and smiled slightly. Step 2 is complete. Now everything depends on this girl, thought Edgar helplessly. His great-great-grandson was very innocent in these matters. Besides, his pride was too high, so he would not initiate a conversation himself. Luke sat down at a table for two near the window and surveyed the place. It didn't hurt to eat out occasionally. His fame wasn't like that of a celebrity who can't even go outside. He doesn't reach 1 million followers, and from time to time, he gets recognized on the street. Also, being a writer for a famous actor is very different. A lot of people could have read Carrie without even knowing who wrote the book or what the author looks like. At Nevermore, they recognized it since Carrie looks like a book by an outcast in the normie community, and it first came out in Jericho, where the academy is located. Sorry for the wait. Here's your food, said the girl who served Luke a few minutes ago. The girl held a tray and began to put everything on the table. A cheese omelet, bacon, biscuits, and a cappuccino. If you want anything else, just call me. I'm here for you, said the girl with a smile, staring at Luke. Oh yes, thanks, Luke said, not paying attention. He looked down at his delicious breakfast. This guy, thought Edgar, shaking his head. Luke mentally conversed with Edgar as he ate his breakfast. They chatted about training and outcast stuff. After finishing, he asked for the bill. As he was getting up and about to leave, the girl who waited on him stopped him. What's wrong? Asked Luke with a raised eyebrow. Doesn't he realize or have no interest? Thought the girl, and her self-confidence was dropping. The whole time she was attending to Luke, she made subtle comments, but ones that showed interest. She considered herself pretty, and at her high school, she was popular. I was wondering if you would like to grab a drink, said the girl. I already had my cappuccino, said Luke with a strange look on his face. That's not what I mean. I mean, have a drink with me, said the girl, looking at Luke strangely. She's asking you out, said Edgar with a blank look in his eyes. Oh, is that it? Being cooped up in that house talking to a crazy ghost for so long is taking its toll on me, thought Luke, feeling like an idiot. Luke took a closer look at the girl. She had sky-blue eyes like him, but her hair was black and her skin was pale, which made her light eyes stand out. She looked about his age, or a little older. Her hair was shoulder length, and she had beautiful features. Being asked out by a girl like that boosted his ego even more. However, the idea of spending too much time in the sunshine on a hot summer day didn't seem very tempting to Luke. He preferred to stay in his luxurious house with air conditioning and many other amenities. If you want, you can come to my house, Luke suggested without realizing what this implied. Your house? I don't know, said the girl hesitantly. That was going too fast. She wasn't that easy. My house is on Lido Key. We could do everything there. I have a private beach, movie theater, said Luke as he began to list all the luxuries that the house he rented had. The girl opened her mouth, slightly surprised that Luke was living in Lido Key, a luxurious and exclusive area. Why is he coming here for breakfast? The girl thought doubtfully. Lido Key had a shopping district with high-end restaurants. Instead, Luke was eating at the Cheesecake, a run-of-the-mill restaurant in downtown Sarasota. Okay, I'll go. My name is Emily. Nice to meet you. Luke, nice to meet you. Can I go with some friends? These days, it's dangerous to go to strangers' houses for the first time, Emily said. She's not as much of an idiot as I thought Luke, having a better opinion of Emily. How many are there? He asked. 4, with me, 5, replied Emily. Fine, replied Luke after a few seconds. He was only doing it because he found Emily attractive. Maybe he needed some more social time on this vacation and not be cooped up training like a nutcase. Luke slipped Emily his number, and they decided to work things out over there since the girl was still working. He went home and resumed his routine. Saturday came. That meant his date with Emily, or well, his meeting with the girl and her group of friends, since Luke didn't want to have a date in the sunshine. "Coming," Luke said, walking down the stairs and heading for the door. He opened the door and saw a group of 5 people. In the middle was Emily, who was wearing a tight black sleeveless top that highlighted her figure, especially 2 things Luke almost unconsciously averted his gaze at. Then she was wearing a tight, high-waisted short that showed off her waist and elongated her legs. Finally, some sandals and some accessories like earrings and bracelets. Seeing the sexy normie in front of him, Luke felt it was a good idea to invite her into his home. Besides Emily, there were 2 girls and 2 guys. It was an odd group. Emily looked like the typical, most popular girl in school. The others, on the other hand, seemed normal and a little nerdy. "I told you it was him," whispered a short boy, nudging Emily. Yeah, no doubt about it," said in a low tone a girl with short brown hair. "Shut up," muttered Emily, and then she looked at Luke with a smile. "Hi, Luke. These are my friends. Bethany, Jack, Penny, and Leonard," said Emily, introducing everyone quickly. "Hi. Come on in," said Luke, and they all walked in. "Whoa, this house is big," said Leonard, dumbfounded looking at the luxurious house. "You weren't lying about living on Lido Key," commented Emily. "You didn't believe me?" asked Luke with a slight smile. "Don't blame me. It was hard to believe that a guy who eats breakfast at Cheesecake is living in an apartment with a private beach on Lido Key," said Emily, playfully bumping her shoulder into Luke's. "If you had recognized it was Luke Poe, you would have believed him," said Leonard, and Luke raised an eyebrow. "Oh, did you read Carrie?" asked Luke. "Yes, we brought it for you to sign," said everyone, except Emily, pulling Carrie out of their backpacks. "Sure, gladly," said Luke, taking the books and reaching for a pen. It was weird to find 4 fans together. It seemed Emily's friends were better than he had first thought. "I also didn't imagine that the person I was talking to was a famous writer," Emily said with a strange expression. She only invited Luke because she thought he was cute. She didn't know he was a writer. "You would have known him if you continued to read books that others consider nerdy," Jack commented, and the others nodded. "There you go with that again," muttered Emily, dropping the subject. Time passed. Luke and his new friends spent time in the luxurious house. To his surprise, Emily's friends had many things in common with him. Video games, anime, manga, fiction novels, pop culture, etc. They were all nerds except for Emily. Luke realized that she was friends with Bethany, Leonard, and the others because they were childhood friends. Only Emily, because of her beauty, went the way of the popular, but she was still in touch with her old friends. Thanks to this, it was a very fun afternoon. They played video games on the huge 65-inch TV, watched Star Wars, Episode 1 in the private movie theater, and then went to the private beach. "I didn't think you'd like Star Wars and playing video games," Emily said with a slight smile. She was sitting on the sand, looking out at the beautiful sea with crystal clear water. Next to her was Luke. The others were playing in the sea. "Disappointed?" asked Luke, looking at Emily, who was wearing a bikini. As Luke had told her there was a beach, she had come prepared like the others. "No, I was just a little surprised. I'm used to it because of my friends," replied Emily, looking at Luke and lowering her gaze a little towards Luke's bare torso. Luke had a toned torso, visible abs, and muscular, defined arms. This is due to all the training he's done since meeting Natasha a year ago. His outcast metabolism makes getting muscle much easier compared to a normie. In other words, his genetics are much better, and even though he's 15, he fits the Netflix teen stereotype. Besides, with that body and that face, I don't care if you're a nerd, thought Emily, looking at Luke's body. Is that an insinuation? Thought Luke. Although Emily didn't know it, that thought was read by him. Luke had already mastered the ability to read a person's current thoughts. Though there was a range of how far he should be from this person, it was best to look at his target. Although the latter was not necessary if he had the target very close to him. Emily looked up and noticed Luke staring at her. She was a little embarrassed, as she had watched him without disguise. She was more surprised when Luke slowly brought his face closer and closer to hers. He's going to kiss me? Easy, Emily. Slowly move closer and close your eyes, Emily thought nervously. Luke read her thoughts and had to hold back his laughter. It was rare for someone to be named in the third person. Their lips met, and they began to kiss as the sun dipped below the horizon. His lips taste good. I'd like to touch his tongue, Emily thought as she kissed Luke more passionately. Well, if that's what you want, thought Luke, starting a French kiss. Reading minds had its advantages in these things, besides battles to the death. After a few minutes, they both broke apart. For a first kiss, it was quite long and racy as they used their tongues. Unromantic compared to Luke's first moonlight kiss he had with Enid. But hey, he knew his relationship with Emily was fleeting. After the passionate kiss, they returned to the house. Since it was getting dark, they had to go back to their homes. Hey Luke, can we stay in tonight? Asked Jack casually. He usually doesn't get along with boys his age, since he's a nerd and the target of bullies. But with Luke, he'd had a great time. Besides, the house had plenty of rooms. Spending the night here should be great. Emily and the others looked over to Luke, who was pouring himself a glass of orange juice on the rocks. Well done, Jack. I hope he says yes, thought Emily. This time her thoughts were not read by Luke, as he was paying attention not to spill his glass. Yeah, why not? Replied Luke, looking sideways at Emily. Great. We get to see Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, exclaimed Leonard excitedly. We can finish watching all the movies, suggested Jack with a smile. You've seen those movies dozens of times already, said Emily, shaking her head. You girls are staying? Asked Jack, looking at the girls, who nodded instantly. I'll text Veronica that I'm not going today, thought Luke. Luke opened his eyes slowly. The sun's rays were streaming through the curtains in his room, illuminating his face a little. What time is it? Thought Luke, looking around. He noticed a black hair resting on his chest. Oh yeah, we did it, thought Luke, remembering the night before. He lost his virginity to Emily, a hot girl he barely knew. He didn't even know her last name. Who knew that before he had his first time, he murdered a person? It wasn't as pleasurable an experience as he imagined, but it wasn't bad either. He was more nervous than when he fought Sabrina Spellman to the death. Murmured Emily, opening her eyes and noticing that she was sleeping on Luke's bare chest. You've got some nice pecs, commented Emily with a slight smile as she touched them. Thanks, I guess, said Luke, getting up from the bed and pushing Emily away, who puffed out her cheeks, annoyed at being ignored. Don't ignore me, Emily said, hugging Luke from behind. I had a good time last night. For your first time, you did really well. You have talent, she added with a giggle. Tell me something I don't know, Luke thought without saying anything. He didn't really like people violating his personal space. He had met Emily a day ago. He only let her hug him because he felt her breasts against his back, and it was a nice feeling. How did you know it was my first time? Asked Luke, a little curious. He hadn't told Emily. I could tell by your nervous expression different from the confident expression you showed all day yesterday, Emily replied, starting to kiss Luke's neck. Do you want to do it again? She's more daring since we had our first kiss, thought Luke with a strange expression on his face. Just then someone knocked twice on the bedroom door. Are you awake? There's nothing to eat. We need you to open the door for us so we can go buy something. Wait a minute, Emily said, raising her voice. Annoyed at being interrupted, they both got dressed and left the room. Bethany, Leonard, and the others were already awake and looked with slight smiles at Emily. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Wait for me for a minute, said Luke, who wanted to brush his face and teeth. So, congratulations on doing it with Carrie's writer, said Bethany, approaching Emily. I didn't know you were in a minors, commented Jack in a teasing tone. Minors? What are you talking about? Asked Emily, confused. You should read Luke Poe's Wikipedia on Google. He's 15. He turned less than 2 months ago, replied Leonard. 15 years old? Repeated Emily in surprise. No way. He doesn't look 15 at all. His height, his hot muscles, even his personality, muttered Emily. Stop rambling, said Penny. Well, we're both minors. It only took him 2 years. It's no big deal, said Emily. That's for now. In less than a month, you'll be 18. It will be an illegal relationship in the eyes of the law, Leonard said, and the others nodded. They just wanted to annoy their friend. Luke came back from the bathroom and had breakfast with Emily and the others. After that, he told them he had things to do. Training, that is. He could be with them longer, but he wanted his personal space. Summer vacation flew by. Luke's summer was more fun than he had thought it would be. Even though he spent the whole summer with the Umbrio, he barely saw them. Natasha came back, but Luke was able to convince her that he didn't need to be with them all the time as if he were in jail. The Spellmans would not attack him, because if they did, they would be starting a conflict with the Umbrio. It was better to wait until school started. In fact, he was right. No one attacked him during the 3 months of vacation. In addition to training, he spent Saturdays and Sundays with Emily and her group of friends in their huge, luxurious house. Although he got along well with Leonard and the others since they had common hobbies, what he enjoyed most was his training sessions with Emily in the evenings. Thanks to this normie girl, he was able to forget, if only a little bit, about Enid. He knew that he lived in a different world from Emily, so he had no emotional attachment to her. They both lived in different states. He never thought of starting a relationship with her. "Can't you move here and sign up for my school?" asked Emily, lying on top of Luke and making semicircles on his chest. In 4 days, classes would start, and Luke would return to Jericho with Natasha. Emily, in these months, learned a lot about Luke, although she gained more information thanks to the internet and Wikipedia. She learned that he was an orphan, that he was expelled from his previous school in Boston because of bullies, and a few other things that were public from interviews he had. So she knew Luke could move if he wanted to, since he had the money and the freedom to do so. "I can't. My legal guardian is very stubborn. I have to move back to Vermont," Luke replied, putting all the blame on Natasha. Vermont was the state where Jericho was located. "Besides, if I do that, your normie school might get massacred," thought Luke, sighing internally. The Spellman would attack him without hesitation if he was in a normie school, and normies could be killed by crossfire. "Oh, come on. Do it for me, will you?" asked Emily, kissing Luke suddenly. "Do it for you?" thought Luke, looking at Emily indifferently as she kissed him. He only saw Emily as a girl he could satisfy his sexual needs with, an area he was new to. He felt no love for the girl. With Enid, he risked his life to save her. With Emily, he would not. On the other hand, Luke realizes that Emily is attracted to him because of his looks and money. She used his huge house with a jacuzzi, private beach, movie theater, and many more luxuries. Luke bought Emily luxurious clothes on her birthday, which was recently, and noticed that she loved them. The power of money. He didn't blame her. They both used each other, if you could say that in a way, and they also got along well. "No is no," replied Luke, ending the kiss and giving no more room for discussion. "You're bad," said Emily, dissatisfied. At this time, she noticed Luke's indifference, but that made her like him more. "What are we?" asked Emily after a few seconds of silence. "How?" asked Luke, not understanding the question. "You and me. What are we?" "Organisms made up of cells, tissues, organs, and systems that work together to keep us alive," replied Luke. "What?" asked Emily, puzzled. "That's not what I mean." "What is our relationship?" asked Emily. "I knew this would happen. I shouldn't have gotten together with her this past weekend," thought Luke. His biological desires had won out over his rationality. Somehow Luke managed to take the conversation somewhere else and said goodbye to Emily, saying they would talk by video call and message. There was a reason for the internet. The vacation was over. Luke returned to Vermont with Natasha. The trip was shorter since they went by plane. Then, they took a bus to Jericho and returned to their apartment. Tomorrow, he would start class